We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And SpaghettiOs. I don't know if you could tell from that very first sentence of Tom's, but we're doing another experiment this week. It is not Tom's normal microphone, which we were back to last week, and everyone was very thankful for. It's a new mic, not the really terrible one that everybody universally agreed was no bueno. This is something new, something different.
So, I think the other one was like the Cherry X
something, yeah.
Yeah, NGALE X. This is the NGALE R.
Oh, this is also from Cherry.
It's the same company, yeah. So they sent me two microphones.
They did.
And so I'm testing them both. And you're getting a podcast with both of them. So this one, I will hold it up to the camera for those of you on YouTube want to see it. This is what it looks like.
Okay, now this... So if you aren't seeing any of the images, you aren't coming to YouTube to look, this is sort of the square-shaped, side-addressable style of microphone, which makes me think this is a condenser mic and not a dynamic mic. That first one that was tried out was a dynamic mic. Did not work from a distance. It did not work up close all that well either. But this very much more looks like the condenser-style, rectangular-shapey, talk into the side of it type of microphone, except it's got some RGB lighting on it. It must be targeted at gamers.
It is, well, I mean, obviously. But this is meant to be sitting on a table, so this one is definitely not meant to be very close. So we're going to do a couple little tests right here so that you guys can hear. I am sitting about a foot away from this thing, which is far closer.
Down and slightly to Tom's right at the moment.
Yes. Just far closer than most people would be sitting with this thing, I think. I mean, I think gamers are... I don't know. Maybe, whatever. Yeah. You can't... This is not stand-mountable. As far as I can tell. You cannot stand-mount this.
There's no way of putting it onto any sort of microphone mount? There's gotta be. There's gotta be like a threaded insert or an optional clip or something.
I don't know. I could not figure it. They have a stand.
Okay,
that the other one works with. This one does not.
This one does. Okay, all right.
Okay, so this one has got, is more, I guess, built for the easy to control. All the controls are on it.
Okay, all right.
Right. So the other one had, if you were XLR connected, I'm sorry, if you're USB connected, you could. There was an EQ button on the back. There was I forgot there's an EQ button on this one too. There's an EQ button on the back or switch on the back. You can switch them back and forth, and what the EQ did basically is roll off the bottom end.
Okay.
So that's from
that was not what was overdone on that other microphone. you had a very much lack of bass in your voice on that other.
Yeah. So, and that button does not work when it's XLR connected on that one. And then there's there's some lighting on the back and stuff like that. This one obviously has lighting. There's tons of options. Right now I have it sort of it changes colors constantly.
I don't entirely know why you would want the face of your microphone that really only you are likely seeing. Why you would want that all lit up, but that's what it is.
It does the back and the side as well. So, I mean, you can, whatever. And you can actually see your levels on the microphone. There's there's a little readout there. There's a volume control, which I have turned all the way down because if not, you hear yourself and I cannot make it stop. So I have it turned all the way down, but I can still hear you. But I can't hear myself. And there is, I think, a gain setting thingy on there. Plus, like I said, there's the EQ, which I should look at the back.
that drastically changed what you sounded like turning it around.
So yeah, the back. This is me talking about the back of it. So the back of it does not take in sound as well as the front. Obviously, does.
Very clear.
So this is me there's a on the mic.
Yeah, there's a partial cardioid pattern there going on because into the side you're basically silent. So.
Am I really? I'm silent from the side. There you go. All right, they're going all the way around. All the way around. Isn't this fun? Oh, look at that. Okay, whatever.
Doesn't really seem suitable for ASMR. You're not getting the full front to back separation used as stereo left-right. So, yeah, you want to talk into the front of this thing. That's the long and the short of it.
That's the long and the short of it. And it's so it's sort of directional, which is kind of nice. And it's meant to sit on your table. It's got a little stand that comes with it, and I'm, I don't want to try to take it apart right now. I mean, I know the bottom of it screws on.
Okay.
But I could not get it to screw into the other thing, which was strange. But this thing is so far. I mean, you guys are going to hear it for this entire podcast. This is how I'm going to have it. I am within a foot of this mic. I'm sorry. If I have to be closer than a foot from a mic, I feel like that's a problem.
Well,
for the mic.
Unless it's fully expected, like my microphone, stage microphone, you talking mouth right on it. But so I mean, what I'm hearing through Skype what I'm hearing through Skype live while Tom and I are talking here and recording ourselves is not what the final product that you're going to hear on YouTube or in the audio only version, because I'm hearing a lot of background noise, but we'll be doing some denoising. So some of that background noise that I'm hearing through Skype won't be present in the final recording, but not because the microphone wasn't picking it up.
I'm looking at the waveform. Yeah. It's not on the waveform. Like there's no background noise.
I don't know what's going on there, but I'm definitely hearing it. And then, certainly like just picking up your coffee mug and stuff like that's picking up a little bit more. But from what I can tell, just the first impressions, this certainly sounds better than the first Cherry mic that we tried a couple of weeks ago, the dynamic microphone that we tried a couple of weeks ago. That just sounded awful over Skype, and it sounded, I think, even worse when we released our final episode. This doesn't sound as bad as that, but it definitely immediately does not sound as good as your normal microphone. So maybe you can give us a little hint here. Do you have price point on this? Something?
I'll have to look it up.
You'll have to look it up.
You guys think that I lie. I swear, people think I lie. Or people think that reviewers lie to them all the time. It is just not the case. I do not look up price points before I start. Okay. Like, if I find out the price of something, it's by accident.
Well, you want to do that towards the end so that you're not prejudging it, biasing yourself towards one way or the other just based on price point. So I'm not forcing you to look it up if you want to wait until you've written out the full review. But I just have a curiosity because we're comparing your AT 2020, which is, what, a couple $100, $190 or so?
Oh, I don't. So, yeah, it's just over $100 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, okay. So, just seeing what...
So this is the same price. It's $119.
19.
Okay. $119 is what this thing is showing for. It's a premium USB standalone microphone, USB plug and play, RGB illumination, on device settings and monitoring, dual recording modes, low cut filter for gaming. I don't remember how they didn't do that, but anyways, and they do not show this connected to anything like a stand. Like, they don't show it connected to a stand, but it does have what I do like about that, it has a capacitive touch mute button on the top. Yeah. So I'm going to do that right now.
Okay. There it is. If you want to move your lips on YouTube, I don't know whether you're just being silent.
Yeah, I didn't do that. I was just being silent.
Okay. We don't know if Tom's faking it, but I don't think he is. I think it actually.
Yeah, I would not fake it. Anyways, the point is I thought the button on top was stupid when I first saw this thing. Okay. Like, the last thing I want to do is have to tap this thing,
right?
Because that just makes noise. But it is. You just
graze it.
I didn't even touch it that time.
Okay.
Like, I waved over the top of the thing.
Okay, well, we got to be a little careful then, don't we? All right.
So, yes. So, I mean, and you're like, well, this is the same price as Tom's other mic. Tom's other mic requires a preamp in order to work. This one does not. So there is some benefit there to that. So,
and I'll give it this much kudos just on that mute button. I didn't hear any sort of like bump or click or button sound thing when you went from mute to unmute. I didn't hear a bump or a click when you unmuted either. So I will give it kudos for that, because not every mute button is fully silent. Sometimes you can definitely hear it when it's being clicked on and off. So that's not the case here. That's good.
And I know Rob said that the LED lighting and stuff seems sort of pointless. I like it. Okay? I am a sucker for that. So I like my keyboard lights up. Yeah. None on this. My keyboard lights up. My mouse lights up. All the stuff I have lights up. I like the light up stuff. So I'm a little bit of a sucker for that. I do like that. And this form factor, I really like that old timey. Yeah. Chrome plated microphone that you see in like all the smoky lounges in the period piece movies and stuff.
I would hazard a guess this is a little more plasticky than those plastic ones.
Slightly more plasticky, but don't touch it and it's fine. All right. And it does have these little knobs on the side where you can tighten it up so that it doesn't move so easily on you.
Okay.
You know, as far as, but you can rotate the angle of it. So if it was a little bit above you can angle it down or behind. Overall, I mean, I don't know how it sounds. Unfortunately, I tried to do an audio test before this, and I was like, too late. Just before starting the podcast, I'm like, well, here comes another one, guys. Yep. I hope you like it.
That's actually that's in a way a better test. It's just plug it in unfiltered. We haven't optimized anything here, so
I will say they have a microphone, like it's a microphone stand for their other microphone, which they show in it. It's called the boom arm or whatever. It attaches to your desk, and I do like that quite a bit. That's kind of like it has an arm that comes down, and it's meant for the microphone to hang underneath.
Sure.
And I like that quite. I would be using it with this. It's plasticky. Okay. It's $99. It's plasticky, but it has like a little bit of an internal cable routing, but it's easy it's not internal. It's like there's like a snap cover that goes over the top. It secures really easily, but it also, you can pop it open. It has a little hinge on it so that you can secure the cable inside there. It's really meant for a USB cable. It's not really meant for a big, thick XLR cable, which could also be used with this thing. But it's really easy to install on your desk, and I like that quite a bit. It's plasticky. It feels plasticky. So you have to kind of... Dog's pushing the freaking door open. You have to be cognizant of the fact that it's going to feel a little bit that way, but I've had it set up for a couple of weeks. My son is like a fledgling Twitch streamer. He just started like streaming, I guess, the Elden Ring.
Okay, yeah, the DLC download that just came up. Yeah. Everybody's complaining that even for Elden Ring fans, this is a little too difficult, little too hard, little too unfair.
Okay, so my wife and I watch him sometime because he needs to have a viewer. So I'll have to put in. I don't know what his stream handle is. I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, all right.
Send it to Rob. But so you can go out there and just, if you're not like, even if you don't ever watch him, just subscribe so that he can get enough subscribers so that I can use my Amazon Prime subscription thing, or not follow, not subscribe. So I can use my subscription so that he can get the $5 or whatever it is that Amazon allows me to send out for free. And he needs a certain number of followers first. Anyways, he just started, and apparently he went somehow, he said, directly to like one of the final bosses or the harder bosses.
You can do that in those games. You can just skip over all the things you're supposed to do in between and just go right to the end, pretty much.
So we were watching him fight something that looked like those like in like Chinese New Year's, the dragon things that people hold.
Yeah.
It looked like that, I guess.
The long serpentine style dragons.
He was getting his butt kicked.
Yep.
He said some words that my wife was not impressed with. I will tell you that much. He was very frustrated. He said he fought it for like 3.5 hours before he finally beat it. And then he said, oh yeah, and I found out it wasn't the right one. So I didn't need to. Anyways, I will put his handle in there if you guys will tell your kids or whatever, or do it yourself.
So he's been using the cherry mic that we used 2 weeks ago, or he's just been using the arm, not that microphone?
He's just been using the arm, but he's connected it to the I think it's Monoprice's dark matter microphone.
Okay, so a better microphone. All right, that's good.
Yeah, and that one, and it has a USB cord, and it goes through there, and it's been holding up. And that microphone is not light. That like the M Cherry one is, it's a little it's a little lightweight. The dark matter one from Monoprice is beefy. It's got a metal casing on it, and it's like a metal shield thing, and it sounds pretty good on. At least when we were watching him on Twitch, his bad words came through very well.
No trouble understanding.
No problem.
So this microphone that you are using today on this very podcast episode, you have it connected via what at the moment?
USB.
Okay.
USB.
But it is capable of using?
This is the only way that you can use this microphone.
Okay, so this microphone today that you're hearing right now on this episode, Tom speaking through, USB connection and USB only. That's the only choice on this one. Okay.
Yes. Which is fine. I got no problems with that.
Yeah.
Sorry. just copy.
Tom was like, "Yeah, shouldn't really type while on this microphone. That didn't sound too loud over here with the
immediately types on the. If I had a small mouse pad, I would put it underneath here, and that would probably be enough. But I just don't have a small. I don't have a small one. I will tell you though, it's funny because we talk so much on this podcast about noise transmission and noise isolation and all this other stuff. And I was at the bike shop the other day, and he decided, because our air compressor is in the attic, right? And of course you use that to inflate tires and all sorts of other things. But you're supposed to like drain those things a lot, apparently, like every day. So because they suck water, they suck the air from outside, and it's got moisture in it, and it condenses inside of it, so it needs to be drained. Well, it's been up for like 2.5 years or something like that, and he's never taken it down, so we took it down to drain the water out of it. First of all, I don't know how they had it in the air. I think it seemed like it was just water to me, but a lot of water came out. But then we have it in the room with us now, and I'm like, dude, this thing is way too loud. And he's like, well, maybe we can build a box around it. I'm like, okay. We had this big piece of foam, right? Like squishy foam that came in some pack, with a bike that was packed in. And I threw it underneath, and the noise level reduced by like 50% immediately. He's like, wow, that's pretty good. I'm like, it's almost like I told you that. I've been telling you that for a long time. If you put something underneath there, we could. He's like, I didn't think it'd make that big of a difference. I'm like,
ever had your phone vibrate when it's sitting directly on a table versus thrown onto a pillow on your bed?
You can't find it, can you, when it's on the pillow on the bed? But you find it right away if it's on the end table there.
Phone stayed the same vibration.
Anyway, so I will say that one of my other sons has been out of town for about a week, and he's coming back any second now.
Okay.
So expect the dogs to go nuts and start barking. And going crazy.
Window washing is supposed to be happening outside of my apartment, so that might happen during this episode too. So there might be some other fun stuff going on. But we'll muddle through whatever we can.
Cherry XTRFY whatever NGALE R is what this one's called.
I
call it
really
NGALE.
Hate vowels over there, although they stuck one in. They
like to play the Wheel of Fortune, and they ain't buying crap.
They
ain't buying nothing.
Man, oh man. All right, NGALE R. There it is. Let us know, folks. We welcome your feedback once again. If Skype is any indication, I don't think it's as bad as the first one.
That's not the glowing endorsement that it could be. But I will say, I mean, this is perfectly, at least so far, I feel like this is a perfectly good, fine.
Perfectly serviceable.
Serviceable. I wonder if I can figure out what if I press this button? What happens?
Great. Yes, let's start experimenting right here on the podcast, live while
we're recording. That just switches between changing the how hot the microphone is, and it switches into there's a little dial in the front, and you can press it, and it switches between the output basically, and then the volume that you hear as you plug your headphones into the back of the mic. So the back of the mic has a headphone a headphone jack, USB port, and a button to change the lights, which is just cycles through. All right, let's see here. What did you watch, Rob? Because I didn't watch crap.
Okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I will just say, of course, last night, because we were recording this on Tuesday morning, watched the final game of the season, 2024 NHL season. The Stanley Cup was awarded to the Florida Panthers. So right there in your state, both of the NHL teams in Tom's home state.
Where are they from?
They're in Sunrise.
Where the hell's that?
About 15 minutes north of Miami.
Oh, whatever. Yeah. Nobody goes to Miami.
So, both of the Florida NHL teams have now won Stanley Cups well before the Vancouver Canucks. Both of them came into the league well after the Vancouver Canucks. They're never going to win one in my lifetime. It's just never going to happen.
In the Canucks' defense, hockey really isn't that popular in Canada,
right?
So let's just all agree that's really the problem. You don't have the support.
We all predicted that. I mean, so the Edmonton Oilers, who are kind of they divide Canada. There's some areas. I mean, of course, people from Edmonton are cheering for them, but I mean, like Calgary, nobody in Calgary was cheering for the Edmonton Oilers, even though should be over the Florida Panthers, should be, and then like. We're kind of a little bit down in general on the Oilers here in Vancouver. I mean, they knocked the Canucks out of the playoffs this year, but that wasn't really the reason. See, the thing was the Edmonton Oilers had like 6 first like first overall draft picks in a row because they kept winning the draft lottery over and over. There was a period of time where they were terrible, but they kept winning the draft lottery over and over. So they got like 6 number 1 overall picks in a row, and they've only been able to hold on to like 3 of them just for money purposes. And it's just, we all felt it was a little bit stacked in their favor. Well, they finally got to the Stanley Cup final with the supposed best player ever, certainly of his generation, Connor McDavid, who won the, most valuable player award, and everybody in Florida booed like crazy. So anyway, it was a fun finale. We got all the way down. It's best of 7 series in the Stanley Cups. Throughout the tournament, you got to win 16 games to win the Stanley Cup. And Florida Panthers did it. It went right down to Game 7. They went up 3-0, and everybody thought it was just going to be a sweep. And then Edmonton Oilers raged back and won 3 in a row themselves. So it came down to a single goal in the final game. So it was, it was entertaining. It was very entertaining. Stanley Cup final.
I always like it when it's close.
Yeah, that's what you want. So congratulations to the Florida Panthers. Not that I wildly cheer for them, but I also don't hate them. So good on them. That's good enough.
Okay. And what else did you watch?
I also watched a movie, Creed 3. So this is Michael B. Jordan as Adonis Creed, the son of Apollo Creed from the Rocky movies. So this is, of course, the third one with Adonis Creed as the star. Now, this is the first of the Creed movies where there is no appearance whatsoever of Sylvester Stallone as Rocky. In the Creed 1 and Creed 2, Rocky actually played a pretty significant role in those movies, and they decided, okay, Creed 3, this is Creed's story now. We're not going to have the thing of bringing Rocky back in any sort of major role. I did feel there was a scene in this movie where it felt a little out of place that there wasn't at least a cameo of Rocky. He didn't even need to have any dialogue, although I felt it was a scene in the movie where it would have made sense for him to just say just a sentence or two to Creed to kind of get his mind turned around the way he needed. And it would have fit really well, but it almost felt just a little bit weird that he wasn't there whatsoever, even if it was just we shot Sylvester Stallone on a green screen in a completely different area and just had his face just to like be there, because it felt weird that he wasn't in the scene. That I don't want to give anything away, but it felt a little strange that he wasn't there at all. And it wasn't as though they were trying to erase Rocky from history, because they talk about him, they bring up the character of Rocky, they mention him in dialogue, so it wasn't like they were trying to say he wasn't part of this whatsoever anymore. Whatever it was. But overall, this is Michael B. Jordan also directed Creed 3. So that's the first time that he's done this, and I don't remember if it's the first time he's directed a full feature film, but it was certainly people were mentioning this is certainly the biggest budget, most widely released thing that Michael B. Jordan has done as director, and of course as lead actor as well. And so much was made of his very keen fondness for anime and bringing in some of that style to the boxing fights that are going on, which is definitely the case. Certainly some of the slowdown, some of the angles, very reminiscent of anime. He made a choice in the big final climactic boxing fight
Did he power up? Did he Super Saiyan?
Not quite that. No, didn't quite go Super Saiyan. To do the thing that anime often does in these gigantic climactic battles, which is the fight is actually taking place in one location, but then for thematic and emotional reasons, the background changes to something else, and it's as if these fighters are in a new location, even though we're meant to know this is still taking place in the original location, but for visual flair and for thematic reasons, we're going to change the background behind the fighters to give you the sense that something else is going on. Right. I got all that. It all made sense on paper, and I'm sure in his head, but the actual emotional impact, the emotional reaction that I had to it, I felt like it lessened the scene. Because while we were supposed to be more like inside the two rivals' heads, and it's as if they have shut the rest of the world out, and it's just them in more of a chess match than a physical match, right? Like that's what's going on here, and that was conveyed clearly enough in the stylized imagery that he went for. But I was like, a boxing match without any crowd noise, not quite as exciting. It's like I felt like I kind of diminished.
There's a reason why they do all that, like with the X Games, that sound does. The X Games are delayed when you see them on TV by a certain number of seconds or minutes, because the sound guys are frantically adding, sound effects to everything to make sure that it's as exciting as it looks. Because if you just sort of watch it, it's like, You can't hear anything.
That's right,
you can't hear the crashes. You can't hear the falls. You can't hear the impacts. You can't hear
they
the
don't have microphones
noise of things
set up everywhere at an X Games trial to like capture close up noises right in the moment. Yeah. So Creed 3. I mean, I think it's worth a watch. I will certainly give it that much. I personally didn't like it quite as much as Creed 1 and Creed 2. I like those movies a lot. I really liked Creed 1 a ton.
Yeah, Creed 1 was excellent. I don't remember seeing Creed 2.
Yeah, it was good as well. So this, I mean, I will say it was my personal least favorite of the three, but that's not to say I thought it was bad at all.
Right.
And I thought it was perhaps a little bit more ambitious than the final product ended up being, which is like, that's going to happen sometimes, right? Sometimes you're envisioning something and it's really cool in your head and it's really cool on the page, and then the final product isn't quite as cool as you imagined it, not for like lack of, like I say, aspiration or ambition or something like that, but just that what actually ended up there on screen, I was like, it's not quite as good as I think they were going for. But I mean, I'm not saying that to be like really critical of or to give it a thumbs down at all in any way. That's just my reaction to having watched this movie. Tessa Thompson's character, I didn't feel like she got as much not necessarily screen time, but just as much of an arc of her own. You know, she was really a pretty vital character in the first two Creed movies and got a very substantial arc of her own in those movies, and that felt, to me, reduced in this one. But then, you've got Jonathan Majors in this movie, and for some people, that's going to be an immediate a turn off that they're not going to watch because of what's happened in his real life and criminal proceedings and stuff like that. This was right at the time where Jonathan Majors was massively, massively on the rise, right? Wasn't really well known from Marvel and playing Kang in the Marvel Universe yet, but was really, really on the rise. And you can see why at the time that this movie came out and none of those criminal proceedings had taken place yet, so much praise for him because he is a heck of a good actor. I mean, the amount he was able to convey through his face and through his eyes, like, we know that they show us the tale of what happened to his character, why he's in the situation that he's in. It's not like that is a secret in this movie, but the number of years that this character has spent, we might know that as a figure, but he conveyed it in his face. If they hadn't said how many years he's been away from this neighborhood, you would know without him saying a word. Like, his performance really was solid and really was good. So separating the artist from the art, if we can do that, I mean, what is there on screen is a really, really good performance. But unfortunately, in real life, we've got some pretty negative things going on with the actor himself. Yeah.
Right. And, I have been back and forth, not in him particularly. I haven't really cared that much about his particular situation. But I've been back and forth, like, with artists and the art as far as that whole thing. And the reality is, no matter how much you like a particular artist, just like you in your job, you're replaceable. No matter how indispensable you think you are, there's somebody out there who can do your job. Almost certainly, I think we can say there may in some cases be a few people who
are some people who are truly unique, and everything else looks like an imitation of them. So it's pretty much
that's true.
Impossible.
But for the most part, you can replace somebody. So I have no problems with people who are problematic. They need to, I'm not saying that they can't get a second chance or, redeem themselves in some ways. People do that all the time. You can definitely look at Robert Downey Jr., who went through some really hard times in his life and made some really poor decisions, and now has come back and has, bettered himself as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm not like buddy with the guy, but he can, you can feel kind of good about supporting him now, as opposed to, where he was back in the, I guess I called them the Brat Pack days.
Sure.
So as far as me watching things, I have not been watching very much because we've been very busy around here. It's the beginning of summer. Kids are in and out of the house like crazy, and my wife and I are always exhausted, so we watch like 10 minutes of TV and then she goes to bed. So she actually asked if we should, so like, oh, let's watch a movie. You guys want to watch a movie? I'm like, I wanted to watch Elemental because I it looks good. I like Pixar, and it's generally entertaining no matter what. And I was like, it's an hour and 47 minutes long. She's like, I'm not going to stay awake for that. I'm like, okay, fine. We won't watch anything.
Not that long a movie.
It isn't.
It's a pretty reasonable runtime for a
movie. It might be 2 hours, but anyways, it's not a hugely long movie.
It's not a 3 hour epic.
She asked about watching Dune the other day, and I just laughed. And just like, I don't have 15.
Although I don't feel like that movie drags at all. I feel like you can absolutely
definitely the second Dune does not drag.
Yeah. Oh, you were talking about part one.
Please.
Part one you could fall asleep in. Yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah. So I've been just putting sports on in the background. I don't think I've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but one of the because the Olympics are coming up, so there's a lot of people are trying to get into the Olympics, and it's in your world you're like that doesn't apply to me, but in their world it is literally everything.
It is everything. It is the entire focus of their life at the moment. Yes.
Rob's sport of choice, of course, is hockey, and a lot of people do love and get really involved in team sports. I do not.
Okay.
I do not connect to teams. I do not connect to cities. That does not make me feel part of a group. I don't want to be part of your group. I don't generally like you, whoever you are. Just as a general rule, if you're good statistically, you and I are not going to be friends. So, and I don't mean that you're a bad person. It's just that I'm kind of a jerk. So, when you put all those things together, I like sports that are individual. And more than that, I like sports that are individual, but not competitive against other people. If that makes sense.
Okay.
So I like sports where you compete against yourself.
Yeah.
And then if you have a good day, or if you're if things go right, or you make a good decision, and if you guys are like, well, he's a rock climber, of course. You're right. Rock climbing is that.
Well, what about
that's
something
exactly
like sprinting, where you are competing against other people on the track, but really you're competing against the clock? That's ultimately
love track and field.
Okay,
love track and field, and of course, there's the relay races. I like those too. That's fine because that's only a couple of people and whatever. I started watching weightlifting.
Yeah.
Did I mention this on the podcast already?
No, you mentioned it to me off the air. Yeah.
Oh my God. I am so invested in weightlifting. Like, it is crazy.
It is crazy.
Especially because they are competing against themselves and sort of in their placement within the hierarchy of, so they're like the top 10 or 12 all get invited to the Olympics, and then there's also like country thingies involved and stuff like that, but they're desperately trying to get within the certain range so they can get chosen for the Olympics. And also sometimes there's like only 3 people per country over the course. This is what I understand. If you're a weightlifting person, you're like, he's doing this wrong. Please understand. I started watching this like 2 weeks ago. I am so invested. Only 3 people per country across all the different weight categories can go. So not only do you have to be good enough to go, period, but you also have to be good enough so that your country is like, we're actually going to send you over this other person in this other weight category who maybe isn't as good as you are, relatively, but the other people in their weight category are not as good as the other people in your weight category, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the emotions. Oh, there was a woman who had she was like in like the 49 kilogram, that's how much they weigh, 49 kilogram, holding up like 85 kilograms above her head, tears streaming down her face because that was her third and final attempt, and she was desperate to get it up so that she could have a chance at the Olympics, and she was just bawling. I was like, the emotions.
Yep. I got to tell you,
absolutely
weightlifting scares me because the potential for injury in that thing, it frightens the heck out of me.
the lower weight categories, the people in the lower weight categories are lifting proportionally more weight than the people in the upper categories. People are like 2/3 or 3/4
percentage of their own body weight. Yeah,
they're the 49 kilogram people throwing up double plus of their body weight over their heads. I'm like, how are your elbows not breaking?
It freaks me out.
It is so exciting. So yes, I have gotten into I was at my parents' house talking about it. I'm like, you gotta watch this Italian woman. She is absolutely going crazy trying to get into the Olympics. She's doing everything she can, and like she didn't lift the weight up. She was on the ground crying before. I mean, not that I like to see people cry, but I like to see people get excited and stuff. Right. And
the outburst, the unbridled, uncontrollable outburst of emotion. It's genuine. Yes.
Everybody I talk to about this, including my wife, who is being forced to sit through this stuff, is like, looks at me and goes, I cannot believe you like this. I love it. It's so good.
For saying you watch nothing, you've talked longer than I talked about the things I watch. So.
I love it. If you do not go and look up the 49 kilogram
qualification,
there was one in Thailand and one in like Bulgaria that happened in the last like 3 or 4 months, and like the Bulgaria one was three or 4 months ago, and that was like the second to last big tournament before the Olympics, and the Thailand one just happened, and that was like the last chance. This was your chance. So people are throwing up. They're like they're not trying to win the competition. They don't care. They're just trying to make a big enough number that they can get chosen to go to the Olympics. And they're like, this is a personal best by 5 kilograms. I'm like, God, 5 kilograms. That's like, I don't know, 12 pounds or something. I mean, that's a lot of extra weight up there. More, So yeah, very exciting. So if anything I said sounds like, I kind of like sports like that, you've got to watch weightlifting. It is nuts. It is so
well, you made
crazy.
Some of our crowd very happy. I know we've got some weightlifting fans here who listen to the podcast.
Oh my God. It's insane. Like some of them walk out and you're like, oh, that person looks like they lift weights. And some of them look out and like, that person looks like other people lift them to lift weights. Like they don't look like a weightlifter at all.
It's like the eating champions where it doesn't make any sense. The ones who are the very best.
It was like, how are you throwing up this weight? And
because they haven't been training just for looks. They've been training for actual practical strength.
The crazy thing is where I'm watching it and it's like the 49, and I keep going back to the 49 because they were just like the first thing I watched. I started watching a bunch of other stuff too, but they're the first thing I watched. And we're watching it and you could see them sitting behind the stage in the staging area or whatever, getting ready to lift. And they're so small that they're sitting on like the waiting chairs and their feet don't touch the ground. They're just kind of hanging there. I'm like, oh, this person would walk up to you, you'd be like, you are so short. And they would lift you and your brother above their head.
Center of gravity. It's a help.
So awesome. So impressive. So, all right, this is AVRant, the podcast that now talks about nothing but weightlifting.
Seems like
2 hours of weightlifting is what we're doing.
Better hope that microphone doesn't sound awful because you need at least that quality to match up.
I know, right? Podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Go to our website, find our old episodes, our show notes, and our Flickr albums so you can follow along with our pictures that we will be referring to during the podcast. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast, YouTube.com/AVRant. That's our live recording where you can see this microphone. Holding it up again, right? Holding it up again. I didn't mention
Move it
this
all
before,
around.
If you touch the little thing, it turns red. Look.
Muted. All right. That's what the lights are useful for. Visual indicator. Good to know.
Visual indicator that you are muted.
That's right.
Reminds you, which is good which was funny though, but I muted it and then unmuted it and it was still red because it's flickering, it's going through the different colors and it was just happened to stop on red. What are you going to do? If you want to contact us directly, contact Rob at avrant.com. His socials is @FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My socials are nothing because I've given up.
Just email them, folks.
I'm giving up. I'm not allowed to have Instagram because I started one for one of my businesses and I don't want to use it anymore. And they were like, nope, you already have one. I'm like, I don't understand. Everybody's got like a bunch. But I can't have any. Let's see here.
Listeners of the week.
Socials, right? Yeah, listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, support the podcast in some way. You can do that by going to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which will send you to a PayPal donation site, or you can go to patreon.com/avrantpodcast, where you can sign up to be a monthly contributor to the podcast. And right now, we have 134 patrons, and we thank each and every one of you.
That is right. That is, once again, patreon.com/avrantpodcast if you'd like to sign up to make an automatic monthly donation. So holding steady there at 134 patrons at the moment, and thank you all very much for your financial support.
We also got notes of gratitude for keeping the podcast going through Tom's love of Tom talking about all this stupid Olympic stuff that he cares about.
And changing mics.
Mohsen, Rob, who's not you. I don't know. Is this you?
Nope.
Did you just put
different
this in
last
so
initial.
Okay. He said, just in case nobody else mentioned it, that new mic that I tried was no good. Okay,
that's from 2 weeks ago. Hopefully this one's better. Let us know.
Let us know, Rob. Mike, who says he appreciates Mike P, who says appreciates our dedication, Dazz, and Mike H.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, all of you, for thanking us.
That's right. I'll say those names one more time. That's Mohsen, Rob, Mike P, Dazz, and Mike H. Thank you very much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
So in the news this week, Netflix announced they will open their first 2 Netflix house locations next year in the Galleria Dallas Tech Mall in Texas and the King of Prussia Mall in Pennsylvania. What? King of Prussia Mall?
That's the name. I don't know.
Please, people. What? It's just called the mall. It's the mall and then the address. That's the mall at the corner of. That's what it's called. Don't be weird about it. They will be taking over former department store spaces with over 100,000 square feet to fill at each of them. So what is a Netflix house, you might ask, because I am also asking it, because who needs to go to some place to watch Netflix when you can do that? Well, that's a little vague, actually, but it definitely is a place to watch Netflix. So you can't, right. They literally block the app while you're in there.
It's just...
Specifically.
It's not a movie theater. It's definitely not a movie theater. That is not what is going on with the Netflix house.
That's a little vague, actually, but what is it? For the past few years, Netflix has been holding live events and pop-up experiences, more than 50 across 25 cities, according to Netflix reps. The events are themed and based on popular Netflix shows, and they've apparently been successful enough that Netflix thinks large permanent installations make financial sense, or, more likely, they're dumb. They've said that outside each Netflix house, you'll see sculptures and murals of popular Netflix characters. How could that possibly go wrong? Said everybody who's ever been to a mall and seen things with spray paint on them.
Right.
Inside, there would definitely be restaurants with unique menus inspired by Netflix shows. That House of Cards menu is going to be to die for, I think. It's going to be very high class. There will be memorabilia and themed merchandise available to purchase, and there will be live interactive experiences that will be updated throughout the year. Things like Bridgerton-themed dance classes, competitions from Squid Game, and other immersive experiences, all based on Netflix properties. Yeah. So kind of like mini theme parks. We'll find out when they open in 2025, which will definitely not be 2025. But, so here in town, in St. Pete, where I live, my socials have been inundated with advertisements for like a VR experience. Yeah. And if this is not that, then they are making a bad decision.
I mean, they made no mention of VR specifically. No, that doesn't mean it's out of the question. It doesn't mean that they absolutely won't, but they did not mention it specifically. That is for sure.
I really, we have said this on this podcast years ago. I think during COVID we talked about it. Transforming movie theaters into VR spaces, transforming department stores, which have huge floor space that can be divided up into VR experiences. Because I have gone and done a VR experience at a place here it was in Tampa. But it was very small, so they would put you in this small little space, and it had like a barrier kind of around it, meaning that you would bump into like something soft. But that was the space that you could physically move around in, and the game was kind of, I think, set so that it only let you move a certain amount in any direction, so you're kind of in a cave sort of situation. Anyways, it was interesting, but with a larger space that you're open up to and the ability to move around. I mean, this seems like a no-brainer for this kind of situation. If they don't have some aspect of this going on in this Netflix theme park, whatever, I don't know. I don't know who they're talking to. They're making bad decisions.
Yeah, I'm not absolutely sure. But anyway, next year, if you are in close to the Dallas, Texas area, or close to the, I think the city actually is called whatever that Prussia thing, King of Prussia. I think that actually is the city name. Yeah, I believe so. In Pennsylvania, regardless. So if you're around there, you can check it out. Let us know. Get back to us and be like, here's what the Netflix house is all about.
We're going to have a listener or two just be like, that's what it's called, Tom. That's the name of my city.
That's right.
Come at me, bro. I'll be like, whatever. I grew up in a town that was accidentally named Lard. So, yeah. That's where I grew up. Tidal simplified their tiers and actually lowered prices earlier this year. Now they're doing more things that make sense, which is kind of shocking, actually. Tidal has announced that they will no longer be using MQA, and everybody went, oh, right. MQA, that was a thing.
Master quality authenticated. Yeah.
And the MQA files will now be available in high-res FLAC instead. And even if you downloaded the MQA files, those will get replaced with high-res FLAC now. Sucks to be you. Don't connect your computer to the internet ever again.
I mean, yeah, if you invested in the playback equipment for MQA, because MQA had to be licensed both on the creating of the track side and on the playback side, so you had to have equipment specifically made to playback MQA, and I mean, Tidal was definitely one of the predominant sources for MQA fans.
One might call them the only source, but
I mean, that's not technically true. There were some other ways of getting MQA files, but Tidal would have been certainly one of the predominant ways, but no longer. They're like high-res FLAC. Shockingly, they're claiming sounds every bit as good.
That's not what they said to begin with. It's very dumb. It's very dumb. Let's be honest. It was never implemented correctly, and even
well, I mean, it was very questionable because they were never transparent about what MQA actually did. They refused, and the people who analyzed it themselves, and the people behind MQA always refuted it, so we have to say that. It was always in contention. But the people who analyzed it themselves were like, on a technical level, what came out after the MQA decoding process versus what went in prior to the MQA encoding process, on a pure bit-for-bit level, A, not identical, so calling it lossless didn't seem right, and B, not as good. Some information was missing versus the original file. Now, I mean, as terms of audibility, not many people were making a claim that it actually sounded worse, but they were just like, in terms of making the technical claim that it is lossless, that it has been authenticated by the people who created the original master, which was objectively not true, because there were people like, hey, there's an MQA version of my file, and I never made it. I certainly never authenticated it. So where did that come from? But just the claims that it was lossless, that it was the same as the original master, and all of that type of stuff. The independent research that some people did, which I will say was always refuted by the people behind MQA. So you can choose whom you believe, but it didn't really seem to be exactly what they said, and they were never transparent about it. Never made it open source or anything.
They've also decided to only use one immersive audio format, and you'll never guess, it is...
Big drum roll.
Yeah, it's very shocking here. Dolby Atmos.
Yeah, you would think.
Any titles that were available in Sony's 360 Reality Audio, I honestly forgot that it was a thing. I forgot that
there were
was
some phones that could decode it. They existed.
Yes, because where you want your... immersive audio format is on your phone.
You do.
Or other multi-channel formats will be grayed out and unavailable until there's a Dolby Atmos version to replace them. So, whatever. Who freaking cares?
Well, that's the news. If you were into Tidal because they had these lesser used formats, well, nope, they're just going mainstream now. You got to deal with it. Good for Tidal, I say.
Well, okay, so there's going to be somebody out there who's going to make the argument that we should have competition. And you're not wrong. I think that there is an argument to be made for competition, and that raises the level of quality, generally speaking, and usually lowers prices. Generally, the problem is when the competition isn't necessarily offering anything different or in some way better. That people want more than they want the other things. So you can make the like Dirac versus Audyssey being competition. They are going to compete with each other, and they are offering something different. If you look at the two of them, Audyssey is less configurable. You can do less with it.
Arguable now with multi-QX, but no.
Yes, arguable now. But generally speaking, for most consumers, it's like the plug-and-play version. It's the easy version. Whereas Dirac is more user-intensive. You need more equipment. But it's for the general user, you will have more ability to control it and to adjust it the way you want. Again, it's arguable in that, but at the very least, they have different
default target curves, if nothing else.
Yes, if nothing else, they're going to sound a little bit different.
Run them straight out of the box. Yeah.
Whereas with these immersive audio formats, especially with MQA, which is not immersive audio, but with this supposedly lossless thing, when your whole thing is trust us, bro, it's good. I mean, it was the problem always was that they were cagey about the whole thing.
Yeah.
So what am I getting there other than the ability to say I can play a format that you can't play?
Sure.
Well,
just have an incompatible thing. Yeah. It's like if HD DVD had survived against Blu-ray and some movies had only been available in one format and not the other.
Yes.
That was the sort of road that they were going down. So is that the type of competition we want, or is that just people doing weird proprietary lock-in?
Yeah. So back in August 2022, Redbox was acquired by a corporation called Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment. I got the Chicken Soup.
That's a long name for a corporation, but yeah.
They took on Redbox's $325 million in debt at the time. Since then, their deficit has grown to $937 million. They're really trying to hit that billion.
Shouldn't be that difficult, honestly.
And their plan to raise $175 million to settle some lawsuits and pay some debts fails, and now they've been sued by multiple companies for unpaid debts. Is this all related to the Redbox part of it?
This is all to do with Redbox. That's what Chicken Soup for the Soul Entertainment has managed to do with their ownership of Redbox. Yeah.
One of those lawsuits was by NBC Universal that claimed they were owed $16.7 million for unpaid royalties since February 2022. Chicken Soup settled with them and agreed to pay the full $16.7. That doesn't sound like a settlement. $16.7 million in installments. That's just a payment plan. The first installment was due June 10th, and they didn't pay it.
Yeah.
So you know what this sounds like? Those college kids that lease a Mustang. They're like, I can't believe they repoed it. Did you pay your payments? Well, no, but they shouldn't be able to just repo my car. A judge has now ruled they owe the full amount all at once immediately, and they haven't declared bankruptcy yet. So, get your movies before the boxes disappear. They've also faced a lawsuit from the car company that leases over 400 cars to Redbox, and that car company has won the right to repossess all of their vehicles.
Yeah.
God. Wow. I really don't read this stuff, guys, before I start talking. Rob knows this. Chicken Soup has said that the absence of all those vehicles would mean Redbox would be compelled to terminate hundreds of jobs and be put out of business. Not the $937 million in debt?
Nope.
It's just the cars. So things aren't looking rosy over at Redbox right now, and it seems bad. So I am honestly saying you should maybe go rent something.
Yeah. I'm just wondering how upset they're going to be if you rent something and don't return it,
Oh, they got plenty of money for lawyers for that.
It's just slightly hypocritical, I don't know.
Oh my God, that's hilarious. I do think we need something like Redbox out there. I don't know what's going on with Redbox.
I don't like the disappearance of physical media. I don't like the inability to rent physical media anymore because it's really tough to rent physical media now. That's not easy to do.
Yeah, I am not celebrating the demise of Redbox. I'm laughing at these numbers, which are astronomical and stupid. But it is very.
Out of a $937 million deficit, like $4 million they couldn't come up with on time. They couldn't do that because that's what their installment on June 10th to NBC Universal was $4 million, and they're like, nope, can't do that. so declaring the judgment, well, now all 16.7. I'm sure NBC Universal is going to see that money. I mean, what the? It's just a little bit pointless, but
you can come in.
Actually, repossessing the vehicles, that's one thing. That's
the
real
thing that got him.
Yeah.
Felix, make a decision, son.
Tom is talking to his dog.
I'm closing it.
Yep,
all right.
There it goes.
You do your thing. Now that I've closed it, he'll want to come in for
of course.
Sure. So the first theatrical release of a feature film written entirely by AI, which is Chatbot 4.0 to be specific, was scheduled... Or GPT. What did I say? Chatbot?
You said chatbot.
That's
Chat GPT.
Chat GPT 4.0 to be specific was scheduled for this past weekend, Sunday, June 23rd, at Prince Charles Cinema in London, England, but the premiere was canceled when the AI's friends said that they looked fat in the video and now no longer wants to have that video shown. They took their video down, and now they're complaining. I know. The cinema received 40 complaints the first day it was announced, and another 160 complaints overnight, so they pulled the plug. People were complaining about it?
People were complaining that a movie written entirely by AI was going to get a theatrical release. Yeah. I mean, what were those strikes all for?
No, I understand, but I understand.
Yeah.
But let it fail all by itself. How good can it be? Anyways, the movie was called The Last Screenwriter by... Well, that maybe might be problematic there.
What a choice.
that may have been chosen specifically for the controversy it was going to ensue. It's like, oh, this will make them mad. By Spotlight Media Productions, and was funded in Switzerland because they had to funnel the money through somewhere.
Right.
ChatGPT 4.0 was prompted, and then the production team selected the best sequences, which were filmed traditionally with human actors and regular sets and cameras, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't.
No, I mean, what we're saying is it's not AI-generated images and AI-generated sound. It was just the script. The script was written by a generative AI, but this wasn't a 100% AI movie where everything you're seeing and hearing was generated by AI.
So the synopsis goes: Jack, a celebrated screenwriter, finds his world shaken when he encounters... His worlds are always shaken, by the way.
They should be.
When he encounters a cutting-edge AI script writing system. Initially skeptical, he soon realizes the AI not only matches his skills, but even surpasses him in empathy and understanding of human emotions. Torn between his pride and a fear of obsolescence, Jack is offered a chance to write a film solely with the AI. I mean, this is a Mary Sue. This is a Mary Sue.
I mean, the title, the synopsis, they weren't inviting any of this
I honestly think that this is not a problem here. I mean, all of this... Okay, and I write, right? I write. Yeah. And I compete against AI-generated articles. And it is nigh impossible for somebody not to know something is AI-generated.
No,
if you just read far enough.
At this point, yep.
Yeah, and will it change? Maybe. I don't know. But the problem I've always had, and I think that I thought was the problem with the screenwriters and the actors and everything else, is being replaced by a computer, but not telling people you're being replaced by a computer. As well as having their likeness AI generated and put up on the screen for the actors. And for the screenwriters, it's like I have to work with AI and then I get paid less because the AI did
much so, yeah.
the first draft, and then I have to clean this thing up and do everything else. And then I get like a editing credit instead of the writing credit, which,
story by instead of the actual screenwriting credit. Yeah.
This is not that. This is we stuck a bunch of prompts into ChatGPT, and this is what it spit out, and we filmed it with real people and real sets and paid those people the way we should. We didn't make some writer be subservient to the AI or whatever. We just decided
in the script of the movie itself. That's what it seems like it's talking about.
Well, that is, like I said, it's a Mary Sue. Let's be honest here. This ChatGPT is basically writing its own fan fiction at this point. So
they prompted it too.
So The Last Screenwriter was never intended for wide theatrical release, but now it will be exclusively available online for free starting July 11th. It's called thelасtscreenwriter.com. Go check it out if you want to. I don't really care.
If you have the morbid curiosity, it'll be there. They won't cost you any money to see it. Yeah.
I think that's interesting. I think it's interesting. I would be interested.
That's what they're banking on.
But the other thing, though, is it's clear that even through the little blurb we just talked about here, humans had to be involved or it was going to be gibberish, right? There was no chance that it was going to be just it just spits out a fully formed, polished movie, and then you could go film it with real people or, AI generated people or whatever, and it was going to be perfect. A human had to come in and go, oh God, what is this? What is that? And cut this scene and add this scene and do all these other things. So I'd be interested to know, like, I would be more interested in the behind the scenes of this movie, what the AI actually.
Well, actually, there's quite a bit of stuff on the website for the movie about that. Yeah. So if you're interested more in it, they do have quite a bit of description there on their own website.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, questions from our listeners. Nelson has 4 subwoofers in his home theater. Until now, he's just been using Audyssey on his Denon X3600H, but he's thinking he'd like to use a mini DSP 2x4 HD, which he already purchased, runs multi-sub optimizer software, while his Denon handles his 7 speakers using the Audyssey Editor app. What's the order of operations? I feel like we answered this question. Maybe
it has been, but no problem going over it once again.
What's the order of operations here? What's our opinion about how useful the entire process would be? For the record, 3 of his 4 subwoofers can fit in the corners of his room, but the 4th can't go in that last corner. Mm-hmm. So it's as close as the layout of the room allows. Does he calibrate his 4 subwoofers via the multi-sub optimizer and then somehow not allow his Audyssey to touch a subwoofer signal at all? Does he run Audyssey and then correct the subwoofers using the multi-sub optimizer afterwards? He'd like to understand the best way of doing things in this situation.
Yeah.
I think I wrote an article about this. I'll try to find it. But basically, run the multi-sub optimizer, do all of that.
All by itself, the 4 subwoofers, which you are going to measure each subwoofer one at a time, and actually using Room EQ Wizard. All of this is described in the multi-sub optimizer instructions, but you are going to be measuring each subwoofer one at a time, all by itself, from more than one microphone location. So this is quite a few measurements that you end up taking with Room EQ Wizard to begin with. You then import all of those measurements, so multiple mic locations for 4 subwoofers in total, import all of that into multi-sub optimizer, and then choose what you want the multi-sub optimizer to do with all of that measurement data. So that's the beginning point.
Then, after you've done all that and applied all the EQ that the multi-sub optimizer is going to do, you now have a single, you're sending a single output signal, subwoofer signal into it, basically from your AV receiver.
Yeah.
Right? So you're going to tell your AV receiver you have 1 subwoofer.
That's right.
You're going to connect that to your
mini DSP.
Mm-hmm. Then you're going to use the Audyssey to level match, which it'll do automatically. And then you will basically let Audyssey do its thing. Mm-hmm. So it will EQ as well. So you'll be putting EQ on top of EQ, but what the multi-sub optimizer has given you that nice even response throughout all your seats for all 4 subwoofers. Your Audyssey is going to see that as a single subwoofer, as it should, and then it will EQ that. Yeah, basically.
Yeah,
which it should do very little to it because it doesn't have to do that much to it.
Well, depending on what your desired target curve is, because the way to conceptualize this is what the multi-sub optimizer is doing. They give you 3 different options inside of the multi-sub optimizer software of what do you want us to do? What do you want us to target here? Do you want us to just try and achieve the very flattest frequency response regardless? Do you want us to try and match some of the subwoofers to one of the subwoofers as the target, or do you want us to just try and achieve the very most uniform response, not necessarily linear, not necessarily flat, not necessarily any target curve in particular, but just exceedingly uniform response across all of the multiple measurement microphone positions that you used. So it's important to label your data correctly, the measurements that you take in Room EQ Wizard to begin with, import all of those into the multi-sub optimizer, and then I highly recommend choosing that 3rd option. That is the newest option, but that is the thing I want most from the multi-sub optimizer software. It is the thing that would be by far the most difficult to achieve with just brute force trial and error. It would take you ages and ages to do it with brute force trial and error, whereas it can calculate it quite well, giving independent delay setting, volume setting, and equalization setting to each of your 4 subwoofers individually, but with the goal that once all of those 4 subwoofers are playing in unison, they will produce the very most uniform response from seat to seat to seat. So now that you have that, we're taking all of that as one single bass producing thing. But we know that when we run Audyssey via the editor app, when I move that Audyssey microphone from seat to seat to seat, what it's going to measure in the bass is going to be exceedingly uniform in all of those seats now, thanks to that multi-sub optimizer software. And now that it's very uniform from seat to seat, it can do an excellent job of matching whatever target curve you choose in that Audyssey editor app for the entire frequency range, including the subwoofer output. So you are not deactivating what Audyssey does to the subwoofer output signal. You're still utilizing that. It is still the thing that you're using to choose your desired target curve. If you want a gradual rise in the bass response, starting at 200 hertz and gradually going up a slope as you go down in frequency towards 20 hertz, like if that's what you want to choose, which is not Audyssey's built-in default, but if you want to draw that target curve in the Audyssey editor app, you're still using Audyssey to achieve that final target curve. But what Multi-Sub Optimizer has done is made it so that no matter where you place that Audyssey microphone, it's like, oh, I'm getting the same response from the bass in every seat. That means I can be aggressive with my Audyssey EQ. I can really tailor it to match that target curve, because if I make one seat louder at this frequency, I'm not conversely making another seat quieter because of room modes and non-uniformity. It's like, no, if I make it louder in one seat, I'm making it louder in all the seats, and I can aggressively match your desired target curve. So yeah, it is room EQ measurements first, individual subs, multiple locations, import that to multi-sub optimizer, choose the third option for the greatest uniformity from seat to seat variation, import those files into your mini DSP. It is now giving you individual delay, volume, and EQ for each of the 4 subwoofers, but then you input the single subwoofer output from your Denon receiver to that mini DSP, and you run Audyssey from the editor app as normal and draw whatever target curve you want for your bass response.
That's right. I don't have an article about that.
Okay.
I have an article about something else that's adjacent to that, but it's geared at people who want to just mess with those EQ switches on the back of their,
right.
Which basically tells them leave it alone. don't do it. Doesn't do anything. Doesn't do anything you want it to do. Dazz, we have an update.
From last week.
Some interesting wallpaper he's got there. I'm going to be honest with you. It makes me a little crazy. For the Nook in their bedroom, Dazz and Drea went with one of our suggested 55-inch TV models, the TCL Q750G from 2023, on clearance for $500. Mm-hmm. Out of the box, it was set to power saver mode with all the video processing cranked up. Didn't like that. But he was able to quickly change it to movie mode with all the motion smoothing, all the brightness turned off, and now he agrees with Rob. It has no right to look as good as it does for only $500.
Yeah.
Impressive.
Yeah.
More importantly, Drea is happy with it. She and their niece are the only women in the house, and now their niece is off to college, so the bedroom nook is where Drea goes when she needs a break from all the men in the house, or when she wants a break from anime, video games, animation based on video games, or video games based on animation.
Yes.
Or movies like Creed 3, which have
a little bit of
anime-based
there. Yep.
filming. The Nook's power level for napping is also above 9,000, so there we go.
She can't escape the references no matter
That's
where
right.
she goes.
You should change the wallpaper to just be like Goku
Right.
and Vegeta. Or the sheets, you could put like a blanket, a throw blanket with Dragon Ball Z on it. They quickly got away from the TV's built-in apps and connected an Apple TV 4K instead. The built-in speakers are tolerable, but certainly not stellar, so we'll probably end up getting those Fluon self-powered speakers we also recommended. They both appreciate our advice, and just to tack a small question onto the end of this, we always used to joke about TVs coming in torch mode and needing to be turned down, but now every TV seems to come in power saver mode and needs to be turned up. How did this happen? Because energy saver ratings on TVs and things like laws in certain states and countries require that a TV not use more than a certain amount of power. So they come in power saver mode out of the box.
The box.
Now they come in power saver mode just so that they can be legal, and then you it's like getting a street legal car. You're like, I upgraded the exhaust, and technically it doesn't break any laws, but I can flip the switch and now I can go. Like, I have an extra 100.
In a way, I prefer the way it is now, not just from the sense of, so many people back in the torch mode days, right? They take it out of the box. It would be in dynamic mode. It would be the brightest and bluest and least accurate it could possibly be. But tons of people just left their TVs that way. We all know many people's houses we can go over, and that's the way, exactly the way that their TV is set, and they've never ever changed it. And we were all, all of us enthusiasts who care about accuracy and at least more closely matching the way it was actually created and meant to look. We're like, trying to convince people to go to movie mode or, THX mode or ISF mode or something like that. And of course, the reaction everybody who has been used to dynamic mode has is it looks way too dim now. I hate it. The colors are much less vibrant. The TV's way too dim and they don't like it. The flip side of it, coming out of the box and just obviously looking way darker than anybody is satisfied with, like, there is the risk that some of the manufacturers are running of some, many people are not going to ever change the settings. They're just going to be like, I hate this TV, and they're just going to return it. But now that almost every TV, like you say, comes in sparse, I'm like, in a way, there's a greater chance that somebody is going to change their picture mode now because it just looks so god-awful out of the box in the power saver mode. And I think that's preferable. I think that's actually better now.
They'll be forced to deal with looking up their settings.
That's right.
Which is what we want them to do anyways. I am copying and pasting right now.
I see. I'm betting a lot of people will end up on the standard mode, which is still not fantastic, but it beats Vivid. Still better than Vivid mode.
That's true. So Dazz and Dre are dealing with some troubles behind the scenes that we won't delve into, but as a little diversion, they decided to go out to a movie theater, which they haven't done in a while, and since it was a spur of the moment, they quickly decided on Bad Boys: Ride or Die as its nearest showtime, which happened to be their closest IMAX theater, and it's been years since they've been there, and since they usually opt for their closest Dolby Cinema when they plan ahead. The movie itself was better than they expected. I think the Bad Boys franchise as a whole,
right?
That if you could describe the entire franchise, you'd be like, I thought that was going to be bad. Yeah. It was not bad, generally speaking. Absolutely hilarious, Dazz says, with Martin Lawrence being a standout, which is good because I don't remember loving him in the last one, but maybe I'm wrong. Dazz figures it's his second favorite in the Bad Boys series, right behind Bad Boys 2, and he thought the new directors did a good job of including some of Bay's signature style. Now that he has stepped aside from the franchise, a solid thumbs up from Dazz for the movie itself. Now, about the IMAX theater itself. First, he says, in quotes, I paid all this money for uncomfortable seats, end quote. Yes, you did. Is it just because its closest IMAX location is inside a large multiplex in a mall, or are all IMAX theaters like that? The recliners as local Dolby Cinema definitely have the advantage there, and not for the included butt kicker tactile transducers, which you can take or leave. They're just so clearly so much more comfortable. Second, it's a digital IMAX.
Let's go through those one at a time. Sure. So I obviously have not been to like every IMAX theater in the world, but I do have 3 IMAX theaters in my local area. And I mean, the seats are like, I would say they're a small upgrade from just your bog standard theater, but they're very much like theater seats, right? The seat bottom automatically, springs up and you just put that down. There's like a little bit of a reclining motion to them, but they're in no way a recliner. It's just like the seat back, swivels back a little bit when you sit in it. Actually is a little bit disconcerting when you very first sit down because you kind of end up leaning back a little bit more than you feel comfortable, but that's because you've got this immensely tall IMAX screen in front of you, so they actually want
your resting eye
line is up at a little bit of an angle, so that is intentional. I mean, shared armrests, not particularly wide seats. The ones, all the ones in my area are, I don't know if it's, I don't believe it's genuine leather. It's like a plastic leather, synthetic covering on there. A little bit easier to clean, a little bit easier to wipe down. But yeah, I don't find any of the IMAX theater seats in my area, particularly comfortable. I don't find them outright uncomfortable, but they're in no way like the plush luxury recliner seats that some of the higher end theaters have. Absolutely not. They're much closer to bog standard seats than that.
So the IMAX theater I went to recently here in town to see Dune 2, I don't remember complaining about the seats or feeling the seats were bad. So whatever. It's here or there. Who knows? Second, it's a digital IMAX, and he spotted some artifacts in the image, mostly when Will Smith and Martin Lawrence were on screen with the Miami skyline directly behind them, but Dazz couldn't discern if it was a physical blemish on the screen material itself, something on the lens of the projector, or just an abnormality in the digital file for the movie. Any thoughts onto why there'd be visible blemishes in this digital IMAX image? I mean, you're blowing it up awful bit.
You
sure start
are.
with that.
Yeah, I mean, this movie, Bad Boys Ride or Die, was not filmed with IMAX cameras. It was not, this is a converted IMAX presentation. It wasn't envisioned as an IMAX feature specifically.
You could make the argument for all three of the things that you said, essentially.
Yeah.
It could definitely be any one of those things. I cannot tell you how many times I've been to a movie theater and the lights go on at the end, or maybe at the beginning when the thing opens up, the screen opens up, and you can see where people have thrown their sodas in the middle of the thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, the IMAX theaters in my area, like the original ones that can still do the film IMAX, like there was a blemish on both of those screens, two completely separate locations, different cities in my local area, but both of them had blemishes on their screens. At the end of every IMAX presentation, whether it was filmed for IMAX or just a conversion, whatever, there's the thing at the end that says, if there's anything about your experience that was unsatisfactory, call this number. There's a whole huge Reddit thread and forums threads for the Vancouver Lower Mainland area of people who are like, I have called that number for years and we've never had those screens fixed. Finally, when Oppenheimer came out, both of those theaters replaced their screens, or at least the section of the screen.
Well, it can't be cheap.
That had. No, it's a tremendous outlay. But I mean, finally they did it. But it certainly wasn't because of people calling the number. It was because Christopher Nolan has enough pull with Oppenheimer, and they were some of the only locations in the world that could actually show the film version of IMAX. So they actually did the outlay of money to upgrade those. So I mean, it's entirely possible it was on the screen itself. Although that probably would have been more noticeable throughout previews and everything. Anytime the screen goes white, you could see it if it's on the screen itself.
Yeah.
The thing is, all of the IMAXs, this presentation, the digital IMAXs, it is two projectors. It's not a single projector. It's two projectors. And so if there's any slight misalignment, he didn't really give a clear description of what type of abnormality he was seeing in the image. So it's very tough to tell without seeing it ourselves or having a really clear description of what it was. But I mean, sometimes there is a very slight misalignment between the two projectors, and that can create, especially in background images, some a weird little shimmer to it, right? Which is just some of those pixels are not perfectly on top of each other like they're meant to be. And it's something as simple as that. So yeah, could be any number of those things.
So third, and on the positive note, the black levels were unexpectedly good, better than his Epson projector at home, but surprisingly, they seem better than his local Dolby Cinema, which he has found underwhelming. We've talked about the special projectors that Dolby Cinemas use, so are digital IMAX theaters using something similar or better, in fact, that would explain the deep black levels? That I don't know.
So I mean, the Dolby Cinemas are widely, as far as there are multiple of them throughout the world built to a certain standard. They're the only ones that are using these 6-chip DLP projectors, where the first 3 chips are sort of like a black and white layer. It's almost like local dimming for a DLP projector, and then the other 3 are used to actually do the color, the way a traditional DLP does. The Dolby, or sort of the digital IMAX, as far as I'm aware, they are not 6-chip. They are standard 3-chip, laser-driven. If it's IMAX laser, some of them aren't laser-driven. Some of them are still the xenon lamps, but 3-chip DLP. So by the specs, the projectors themselves in the Dolby Cinemas should be capable of deeper black levels. Now, where this can go awry is that the Dolby Cinemas, it is critical that those entrance doors are closed. If any light is spilling into the theater from the lobby, which is not supposed to be, but it's up to the people running the theater to actually close those entrance doors. If it's not, those black levels are destroyed, not by what the projector is doing, but just by any ambient light reflecting into that theater. It just raises to the ambient level, and all of a sudden those inky black levels that you're supposed to be getting aren't there anymore. I mean, I am the person who, just before the movie begins, I go down to the entrance door of whatever theater I'm in and I close the doors, because nobody ever closes the door. Nobody's working at the theater. There's no ushers anymore. Nobody's going around and closing the entrance doors of the theater. I'm the weirdo who actually gets up out of my seat, goes down and closes the door. And I'm like, yeah, if you're coming to this movie late, you're going to have to open a door. Oh, no.
My whole life, I am 50 plus years old.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying until I might say that forever. But I am 50 plus years old. Never in my life have I thought of closing the door myself.
Oh, wow. No, I definitely do it.
Never thought of it.
Yeah, the IMAX theaters here, they have like kind of a snaking path from the lobby in there, and that could be enough. Like even if the doors aren't closed, it's harder for the light from the lobby to actually make it to the screen in the IMAX designs. So yeah,
I feel like maybe Americans are better at closing doors than Canadians are, or something. Because I know that I've exited theaters in the middle of a movie. I've never seen I've always had to open the door to get out.
There's one theater in my area where the doors are motorized. They're automatic. They actually close when the movie begins without a human having to come and close them. But everywhere else, I have to go and close them. And it really is me, because no one else is going to do it.
Lastly, that IMAX demos and trailers made it very clear that this was a top-notch IMAX sound system, but the movie itself sounded a little constrained. He was expecting bigger booms, and it definitely wasn't the sound equipment holding things back, so it felt like a missed opportunity to make this an obvious demo material movie on the audio side of things. Any reason to think that other versions, besides IMAX, might actually sound more impressive, or would we expect that if anything is going to seem demo-worthy, it's always going to be with the IMAX version? I mean, there's no reason to think that any version is going to be different than any other version, but sometimes they are.
They absolutely do remaster things for IMAX because they use their own format. They have their own audio format.
You would think that they would goose the bass anyways.
Usually my experience has been that if anything is going to be the loudest with the most tactile from pure sound wave bass, it is the IMAX presentation. I tend to prefer going to IMAX presentations here, although I don't have Dolby Cinemas in my area. I don't have a single one that I can go to, so that might change my tune if that were available, but I do tend to prefer IMAX presentations. But yeah, because things are remastered, like there's no guarantee that the IMAX release version is going to be the very best version. But yeah, I don't. Maybe the doors weren't closed.
No, I think this has maybe, but I think this has more to do with the theater itself. Yeah. It's in a mall. I know that different theaters in my area, depending on, because they'll have the highest end theater like on the end, basically. So it only shares one common wall with another theater, so that sound. I mean, because sound is still traveling, between these different theaters and stuff. So it could be that because this was in the mall and they have sound noise, like I won't call them ordinances, but rules for the building.
Sure,
could very well be that the IMAX theater you were in particular EQs the bass down because they can't have it.
And a lot of the digital IMAX theaters, they were converted from prior existing theaters. They have the 1.85 to 1 screen, not the enormous square shaped screen of the full size IMAX, the 1.37. So there are certain times where it is IMAX in name, but not necessarily the absolute best that IMAX can possibly be. That's not out of the question either.
I would not assume that your experience with this one IMAX is indicative.
The
of
home release
IMAX.
is going to have its own mastering version too, so they might choose to do something different with the home version.
Mohsen in Australia. Last week, Mohsen let us know that he finally went ahead and bought himself the external amplifier he's been wanting all along. I remember that.
Yep.
He wrote his next email to us shortly after our recording session last week, so there hasn't been time for him to test out our theories about why he's hearing a bit of static, noise, or hiss when he is running YPOW, and it switches from speaker to speaker, but at least that noise is not audible when he's watching an actual movie. He had great success following our advice for placement and setup of his dual SVS subwoofers, but he still had his old Yamaha subs on hand in the mini DSP he had already purchased, so he decided to try something new with those.
Mm-hmm.
He put the two Yamaha subs directly behind his primary rows of seats, and then he used the mini DSP to apply a high-pass filter on them so they wouldn't be overlapping with the deep bass coming from his pair of PB3000s. Now, when there are explosions in the movie, there's a real kick to them, at least in his main seats, and he feels like it's much more immersive, so he's liking that. Any further advice about this addition to his setup? I mean, I wouldn't have done it. I just turned up.
It also,
I see what he's done.
Yeah, seems like, he's put step stools for the back row, so you're either putting your feet on a subwoofer or a step stool now. That's kind of an interesting thing that's happened to that back row of seats.
There's not much. I mean, you can't recline that back row of seats, I guess.
No, it's a couch.
So, I mean, if you like it, you like it. That's fine. I mean, tactile transducers would have been preferable in this situation, I think.
Yeah, because I mean, what you've done is like with the high pass filter applied, you've created mid bass modules,
Yes.
near bass, mid bass, near field mid bass modules. Now they are still interacting with all the frequencies that they are playing, right? Whatever those Yamaha subs are playing, you're getting the tactile response from the fact that the physical driver movement, the physical first movement of air from those drivers is like physically interacting with the backs.
It's blowing into the back of the couch.
The primary row
I would
seats.
expect it to
but it is
physically
still
move.
putting sound waves into this room that are bouncing around the room just like all the other bass waves and interacting with everything else in your system that is producing those same frequencies. So my recommendation is like, I have no problem with someone doing this with the equipment that they have on hand. They're like, I've been curious about it. Let's give it a try. Oh, turns out I like it. But I'm like, I think that if you are willing to spend some money, you will, to an even greater degree, enjoy the experience that you have with proper tactile transducers, which are A, not interfering with any sound wave frequencies from other things in your room where they do overlap, and B, will be able to extend lower into deeper frequencies. I mean, I guess you could just say don't apply that high pass filter, but then you're at the mercy of how low those Yamaha subwoofers can actually play. With a tactile transducer like a butt kick or LFE, you'll be able to go over whatever range of bass frequencies you want, now having that tactile response going on in your seats, and it won't be messing up the sound coming from your PB3000 subs and your tower speakers, both of which are probably playing common frequencies with those Yamaha subs right now. So as an experiment, I'm like, okay, that's great, you found something that you love, but to refine it rather than trying to optimize what you've already done here, I would spend some money on some proper tactile transducers. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, that's my recommendation as well.
Okay.
Plus, now you don't have to have the stupid step stools and the subwoofers in your way.
The back row can actually go back to being comfortable and useful.
Yes, people can actually sit back there. So he's still using his Yamaha RX V2085 receiver to process all of the audio. It tops out at processing 9 speaker channels at a time, but it was always possible to physically connect 11 speakers to it. The manual says it can automatically switch between using surround and back speakers for traditional 7.1 channel content and rear presence speakers for formats that utilize 4 overhead speaker channels. Since he had an extra pair of speakers on hand, he went ahead and put those back after having removed them earlier when we recommended that he stick with the 5.2.4 configuration. Are we in favor of playing soundtracks that are natively encoded in 7.1 through a 7-speaker configuration like this and then automatically switching to 5.1.4 for Atmos and DTS content? I think that's 6 of one, half dozen of the other. I don't think you're going to notice a difference. I mean, you can test it. You've got the speakers. Everything's hooked up. You can test it and decide whether or not you think it makes a difference to you.
Yeah, like with the way, like if those Yamaha mid-bass modules are staying in place, if these surround back speakers are staying in place, I'm like, that back row of seats has essentially become useless to me now. Like that's just not going to be a great experience for anyone who's back there, because if there is sound coming from those surround back speakers, it's going to be distracting at this point. They're really close to that back row of seats now. There's nowhere to put your legs anymore. They're going up on top. Like, you've just kind of relegated that back row to being a really, really subpar experience. So, I mean, if it's all about your front row, if like there's nothing wrong with anyone who's like, I just prefer playing back the soundtrack straight, right? Like if it's 5.1, I'm only using 5 speakers. If it's 7.1, I'm only using 7 speakers. I don't use up mixers to put sounds into speakers that aren't in the original soundtrack. I got no problem with somebody preferring to do things that way. So if you like the experience in your primary seats of 7.1 plays and 7.1, including surround backs, by all means keep doing it, because your Yamaha has a nice useful way of utilizing what I do think is the best configuration if that's what you want to do.
So I agree with Rob generally on this. I generally use up mixers because I'm lazy and I don't want to have to keep switching things around constantly.
Yeah.
Which I guess you don't technically have to once you've switched it once, but I just use the up mixer. But I can see the argument, but I think it's more a mental argument than an actual preference for most people. I think they're like, I like the idea of using the right speakers and only the speakers that were used in the mix.
Yeah.
More than it's an actual thing that makes a audible difference. For example, so I've got upmixers going, and with YouTube content in particular, it's really problematic. It does a lot. It does a lot of weird things that you're like, okay, so there's ambient sounds that are going on in the mix, and when I'm sitting down, I'm like, it sounds all right. Sounds like YouTube. It's not, no big deal. But then you walk to the bathroom, which is at the back of my room, and I walk past my surround and my surround back speakers, and they're playing something that just sounds like static.
Sure.
You know what I mean? It just it's shrill, and it's kind of sounds like just almost like distortion, because they're just pulling these kind of the algorithm's like, I don't know what's supposed to be back there. These are kind of the weird sounds that seem like
these are the out of phase sounds.
These are the ones that should be coming from everywhere. So okay, well, I'll put those back there, and then they're like, oh, that sounds terrible. Yeah. But you go back in your seat, and you're like, oh, sounds all right. Sounds normal. So I feel like it's more of an academic thing. Test it. Test it, but be honest about it. In your own mind. Does it really make a difference at the 7.1 versus the 5.1.4? I think you'll.
But if you care about the back row, I'd still recommend getting rid of them. That's where I land.
I mean, you really are, like Rob said, you're turning that into like a pillow / blanket holding device. That's all it's going to do back there is hold these things, because you can't put your legs or knees are now up by your face.
Yes,
because of the step stools. The surround back speakers are blown into the back of your head.
That's right.
So he opted to purchase a Tone Winner AD8300 PA. He bought it with future proofing in mind, since it's an 11-channel amplifier with 3 channels rated at 240 watts and 8 channels at 105 watts, all channels driven into 8 ohm loads. The spec sale goes high as 605 watts and 276 watts, 1 channel driven at a time, into 4 ohm load, but was still a low THD or
total harmonic distortion.
At the moment, his Yamaha 2085 only provides 7.2 pre-out plugs. The front and rear present speakers always have to be powered by the receiver's built-in amps, so he has unused amplifier channels at the moment, and 7 RCA cables going between his amp and his Yamaha receiver. He's going to ask about bi-amping.
Nope.
Aside from the wipe house static hiss noise that we talked about last week, he has also noticed that when he first powers everything on, when he first starts a movie on his NVIDIA Shield, there's some popping noises for about 2 seconds, and everything is fine after that. Do we have any idea what could be causing that? Is there any risk of damage to the speakers from those popping sounds? That's usually like a inrush of power, or like the we would sometimes have amps that you could delay the amplifier power coming on, because it would create these noises.
It's that typical thump, right? Like if you ever used a guitar, PA amp or a guitar practice amp, right? You first turn it on and you get that thump, right? That's what goes on there.
So I would imagine that's what's happening here. I don't know that much about Tone Winner amps.
So it's Jade Designs. It's the same company as behind Emotiva, but with because the prices are even lower than Emotiva. So there's a few little compromises here and there. Honestly, this to me fully explains the slight hiss that you were hearing with the YPOW thing, because the Tone Winner amps don't have the most stellar noise floor. Not that they're bad. They're not bad, but they're not like outlandishly stellar. They're about the same as pretty much any AV receiver. So connecting them to very, very sensitive speakers like your Klipsch's, and then having that pretty darn typical noise floor, but then with considerably higher gain and wattage going on in there, having that initial little bit of soft hiss while YPOW is running. I think that fully explains that now. Yeah, I mean, it's just a slight lack of the utmost soft start circuitry. That's all that's going on here, because it is very typical that you get that little bit of a thump from any amplifier when it first turns on, unless they have specifically...
And you're hearing more than one, because you have more than one speaker powered on all at the same time.
And switch mode power supply is going on here, so it could be changing rails as something starts playing sound. So all of that is pretty typical. There's really no risk of damage to your speakers if that's all that's going on there. That's very safe. And like you say, once the movie starts, it doesn't keep going. It's just at the very beginning. So there's nothing unsafe about what's going on there. You're fine.
Right. It's sort of the disadvantage of not buying the quote unquote name brand or the higher end stuff.
You're like, a little bit of extra money for a little bit of extra circuitry. That's where
that's right.
You can cut a corner.
You saved
here
money.
That's right.
Yeah, you saved money, so you got to expect there's going to be some. It's not going to be the most flawless experience. It's kind of like, you know, buying a used car and being surprised when it has some idiosyncrasies that you're like, oh, I don't understand why this button's all worn out. I don't know. It's the button that turns on the radio. Of course, it's worn out. He was questioning all along whether he should buy an external amp or replace his current Yamaha with a new receiver. Now that he's gone ahead with 11-channel amp purchase, they can only make use of 7 of those amplifiers at the moment. He's looking ahead to what will replace the Yamaha. Obviously, a 7.2.4 configuration is easily doable now, but he was curious about front wide speakers this whole time, so moving up to a 9.2.4 configuration is also a possibility. If he sticks with Tone Winner, and I'm going to tell you right now, I really feel like these little things that we're telling him about the hiss and the
little normal noise flora, yep.
He's gonna
twitching.
Twitching. Gonna return it if he can. They have their AT300 Pro, which costs less than a lot of other processors or receivers, and then can go beyond 11 speaker channels. The AT300 is listed as a 16-channel processor, but that's misleading since it actually tops out at processing 13 speaker channels and then has 3 subwoofer pre-outs. They can genuinely do 9.2.4, and that's where he says he wants to stop anyways.
Famous.
This is me rolling my eyes.
Yep.
So what would be our advice and insight about the Tone Winner AT300 as a potential future upgrade? I mean, your experience with the amp should tell you everything you need to know about what kind of experience you're going to have with their pre-pro. Not that it's bad, okay? Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with it. But if you're expecting the more flawless and user-friendly experience that you've had with your Yamaha, you're not going to have it. I don't know anything about this pre-pro off the top of my head.
Again, there's an Emotiva sister model. There's a BassX 13.3 channel Emotiva sister model to this thing. So I mean, Tone Winner, they provide their own quote-unquote room correction, but it is single measurement position, parametric EQ, 7 bands of parametric EQ for most of the speaker channels. So it's considerably less sophisticated than room correction you might get from a Audyssey system or something like that. The main reason I would steer you away specifically from the AT300 is if your whole reason for getting it is that it supports front wide speakers, you are going to be let down by the experience that you end up having with those front wide speakers, because the only time any sound is going to come out of those front wide speakers is if you are listening to a Dolby Atmos soundtrack that happens to have an audio object that has been positioned by the mixers into that front wide position. That is the only time any sound will come out of front wide speakers if you use the Tone Winner AT300. The Dolby Surround Up Mixer version that is built into the AT300 never puts a single sound into the front wide speakers. It is not DTS-X Pro, so it will not put sound into front wide speakers if you're listening to a DTS-X soundtrack. It won't utilize them. The DTS Neural X Up Mixer is not going to put any sound in the front wide, so it is strictly Dolby Atmos native soundtracks with sounds that were actually mixed in there by the mixers as audio objects. And as we've been detailing in some prior episodes, like there are many soundtracks, Dolby Atmos soundtracks, where they do not choose to use the audio objects and move them into the front wide positions. So if this is your reason for getting this particular pre-pro, it's not worth it. You're almost never gonna hear any sounds coming out of the front wides. Whereas if you were to get something like the Monoprice HTP-1 as your pre-pro instead, it is more expensive than the AT300, no getting around that, but they have their own matrixing, which will put sounds into the front wide speakers much more often than just about anything else, because they will actually take any sounds that are commonly mixed between your, say, front left speaker and surround left speaker, and they're like, well, if there's a common sound between those two channels, it ought to go into the front wide left, and the processor, the HTP-1 from Monoprice, will matrix that for you, and the HTP-1 also comes with Dirac Live Full. Much more sophisticated system. Plus, I don't think you're going to stop at 9.2.4. I think you're going to end up going to 9.2.6 because that all evidence is pointing me in that direction when it comes to you now. And the HTP One can do that for you. It can go all the way up to 15 speaker channels. So I think that's the one that you should get if you want to stick with going with a pre-pro. But if you were to opt for, say, a Denon X6800H instead, also stops at 13. But that one has the Dolby Surround Upmixer version that will put sound into the front wides. It has DTS-X Pro, which will put sound into the front wides from a DTS-X soundtracks, and the AT300 never will. So I know they do cost more money, but if your reason for getting this new processor is to go beyond 11 speakers, then do the one that's actually going to do it. I don't think the AT300 is the way to go here.
Yeah, I remember when I was really new to home theater, and I started doing a lot of research about separates, because back then it was a lot more common for people to believe that separates were universally better. Sure. And I was very much looking into it. I was convinced that I would do a AV receiver, but I was looking at amps. And I quickly discovered, I think through reports much like this one, of people saying, I got it, it has these few idiosyncrasies, but, I saved so much money.
Sure.
So Crown amps and all these other stuff. Oh, it's great. It's got a fan, but it's great. I think that people have a much lower tolerance for that sort of inconvenience, if you will, than they really will admit to themselves. I'll save the money. I don't really care about that. I care more about saving the money, and that's more important to me. And in reality, what they really mean is, I don't want to spend the money, but I'm also don't want to have the inconvenience, and I'm trying to tell myself that it'll be okay, but it really won't. It won't be okay. And that happens more often than not.
Might encourage you very much to go to the Denon X6800H, because it also has the available dedicated tactile transducer output, where you don't have to mess around with trying to decorrect what Audyssey or Dirac did in your automatic room correction to the subwoofer output, and then decorrect that with your mini DSP. For the tactile transducers, you can have the dedicated, I didn't mess with this with EQ subwoofer output that is dedicated to a tactile transducer. I honestly think the X6800H from Denon is the way for you to go here.
And in my article that I linked up there about tactile transducer, I go through that entire problem, which is people just think you can just slap on a tactile transducer and it's just going to be fine. And a lot of times it is fine, but they're like, I don't really like it. I mean, if you're going to do it right.
Yep.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. Yep. And doing it right manually is something that some people are like, oh yeah, it was totally worth it. And everybody else is like, oh my God, every time you run Audyssey, you have to do it again?
And if the budget isn't there, I mean, I would consider returning that tone winner and using that money to get an X6800H instead. Because I know you were considering that at one point. And for all the things that you're saying you want to do, I think that's the better value.
Save some money, yeah. Rob, not you, but somebody else. Rob got, a few years ago, he got a Monoprice 5X Class AB amplifier. I don't know what that is.
That's their Monolith 5X. That's the 5-channel, 200 watts per channel, built by ATI.
All right. When he first plugged it in straight into his wall, when he first plugged it straight into his wall outlet, the amplifier itself produced a very audible buzz. It wasn't a ground loop, and he was able to discern that the buzz was coming directly from the power transformer inside the amp. Some research led him to suspect that he had a DC offset on the electrical outlet, so he gave Emotiva's CMX2 power conditioner and DC offset eliminator a try, and it worked. Boy, I never would have gotten there.
Yeah.
I'm getting bit by some freaking mosquito in here. I'm about to go crazy.
I see.
Fast forward to today, and now he has a Monoprice M8250X 8-channel Class D amplifier. He also has Emotiva's newer CMX2 Plus.
Yep. Whatever. Still a line conditioner, still a DC offset eliminator.
He went ahead and tried the new amp and with it plugged directly into the wall and with it plugged into the CMX2 Plus. Either way, there's no audible buzz coming from his amplifier, so it doesn't seem to be affected by his house wiring's DC offset like the 5X amp was.
Or whatever was creating the offset on that circuit just wasn't on at that time, like some sort of compressor, dryer, whatever. Maybe you've got like built-in whole house vacuum, something or other, because that's usually what's creating that DC offset. And maybe it just wasn't on at the time.
So, or maybe he got rid of it.
That's right.
In the meantime. So if you put this ear right up close to any speaker that's connected to the M82250X amp, he does hear a soft hiss. Whether it's plugged into a wall outlet directly or into the Emotiva's line condition doesn't make any difference. In this case, it isn't audible from his seat. That's just normal amplifier noise, right? Yes.
Sure, sounds like it. If you're like, I've got to get my ear within a foot of the tweeter and then I hear a soft hiss, that is nothing to be concerned about. All amplifiers have some level of noise floor. Some are a little higher than others. It's one of the reasons I love the ATI built amplifiers, because it is really, really low noise floor out of those. But yeah, this is
zero.
This is a different technology that you're dealing with entirely, and having a little bit of a noise floor that is not audible from your seat is nothing to be worried about whatsoever.
So the 8-channel, I hate saying this now, M8250X actually has 2 power cords, and the 2 power cord inlets on its back panel are actually the more rectangular shape with the 3 horizontal prongs that are typically used for 20 amp connections, although the ends that plug into the wall are normal looking 15 amp looking plugs. The most convenient thing for him to do is plug both of them into his Emotiva CMX2 Plus, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of functional problem doing that. Everything powers on and plays just fine. Is he making a mistake by doing that? Is it actually important for those 2 power cords to be plugged into 2 completely separate wall outlets? Well, it really makes no difference if you plug them into 2 outlets if they're not on 2 different circuits.
2 completely separate circuits, that's right.
So the chances of you having 2 completely separate circuits in your room and not having mentioned that in this question kind of suggests to me that you do not. Like normal people, your house was built with 1 circuit.
Sure.
I mean, usually powering more than 1 room.
Yeah.
Except for like specific circuits.
DC offset could have been coming from his lights. That can be the thing
true
too. Maybe you switched from compact fluorescence to LEDs, and that got rid of the DC offset, because that could have been the cause originally. So
I do want to go back to that, but to answer this specific question, it makes no difference.
Yeah.
You plug it into it because they're all going to the same circuit anyway, so it doesn't really make any difference. Why does it have the ability to plug into different circuits? Because it can put out a bunch of power, and when it needs that, and when you have speakers that need that, then you would have to run 2 dedicated circuits to your home theater right next to each other, so you could plug this amp and get power to both of them individually.
Yeah, so the thing is, in this particular amp, also designed by ATI with their power supplies inside, but they're using the N-Core Class D amplifiers. Very good. Very, very good Class D amplifiers. But one of the things about the N-Core amplifiers, first of all, they're about 93-94% efficient. So pretty tremendous. But they have what is sort of becoming the typical high-end Class D modular amplifier thing of, if they rate it at 250 watts, they can sustain 250 watts if you have the electrical power to supply them to do that. Not just a momentary peak burst, but they will sustain it at shockingly low total harmonic distortion. And then they have very, very little dynamic headroom above that. If you look at the distortion plots, they go like up like a straight line, but all the way up there, unlike traditional Class B AB amplifiers, they aren't like gradually rising. They're just like flat, 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 no distortion, all the distortion all at once. It's like a brick wall. So if you have 8 channels times 250 watts, and you are actually sustaining that the entire time, which this amplifier ridiculously can do, it's capable of doing it, that's what those 2 20 amp power cords are for. You would have to have 2 dedicated 20 amp circuits, completely separate from each other. It is capable of doing that. In the manual, it says it is safe to operate this amplifier plugged into a single 15 amp circuit. It is safe to do that, but you will not get the full rated, all channels sustained at 250 watts times 8 power, because just do that math, and a 120 volt 15 amp circuit can't supply that much wattage simultaneously and continuously. The math will tell you that, but that's why they're there. But there's nothing unsafe about what you're doing. It just will not be able to continuously sustain 250 watts times 8. That's all.
That's right.
Yeah.
And to go back, people too often create correlations that aren't there when it comes to their experiences. If 2 things happen coincidentally at the same time, or in the same moments, in their mind they're connected. It makes no like I stepped out of my car and it's hot, therefore stepping out of my car makes things hot. I mean, that's a ridiculous example, but it is how people often think.
Sure.
So you got a new amplifier, you plugged it into the wall, and you plugged it into this Emotiva thing, and you didn't have the DC offset stuff happen that you had before.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, well, this new amplifier must be somehow different or better or whatever. And it could be, but chances are in the intervening years between your, with the first time you had the problem and the second test, basically, of you having that problem again, or getting a new amplifier, so many things could have changed that could have made that problem go away.
I bet he replaced his fluorescent lights with LED lights. I bet that
it could be 1,000 things. He's like, at the time we used to have this device plugged in all the time, and now we don't use it anymore. Right. It's still in the house, but we don't use it anymore. Oh, we had a water filtration system, and now that's gone, or whatever it is. There could be 1,000 things that could have caused it. So almost certainly something changed. That thing whatever that change was made this go away. I would be interested if he still had the other amplifier lying around. Again, I can't touch anything near here because the microphone will pick it up. If he went back and tested that amp, if it still had the DC offset problem, because if it doesn't, then that would.
And chances are, the vast majority of the time, you're using 7 watts or fewer.
Yes, you're nowhere near needing 2 power cords for these. That's why I say amps like this are surely somebody needs them. But of the people that need them, there's many more people who buy them because they think they might need them someday.
Oh, yes.
Which they will not.
All that juicy headroom.
They will not. Yes, headroom. Will, last year around Black Friday, Will asked us for a 42 or 43-inch TV suggestions that could be used as a computer monitor. At the time, he wanted to buy from Costco. He was hoping to keep the price below $250. We suggested either the Hisense A65K, the LG UR8000, or Samsung CU7000. I did not suggest those things, Rob did, so if you don't like it, it's his fault. Will did not get around to buying any of those, so thanks for wasting our time, Will.
Yes.
Thanks,
never change.
Will.
Circumstances never change. You got to do what we say right when we say to do.
Funny that you think we're going to answer your next question since you didn't take our advice the first time. Will,
I see.
If that is your real name.
I bet it is.
But, anyways, now all of them discontinued and no longer available to purchase. The newer models are out, and any in particular we would suggest to meet his same criteria. You're not going to waste my time again, Will. I'm not doing all that research again.
I see.
Will.
I will just say it is no longer Black Friday. The prices you're going to find are around $290, to get as close as we can. But yes, the direct replacements, there is no direct replacement for that Hisense model, and it was very difficult to find in the 43-inch size anyway. It was much easier to find in the 50 or 55-inch size. But yes, replacing the LG UR8000 is the UT8000. It is a bigger change than you might imagine. They didn't just change the model number. They actually last year were using VA-type LCD panels in the 43-inch size, vertically aligned panels, and now they've gone back to IPS, in-plane switching. LG almost always has used in-plane switching, so it was unusual that last year was VA. That was the outlier. But it basically just means black levels aren't as black, contrast isn't as good, but off-angle viewing is much better, and pixel response time is better. So used as a computer monitor, I would probably, if I'm shopping at Costco for a 43-inch TV, 4K TV, go for the UT8000. The alternative is the Samsung DU7200, replacing the CU7000. It is still a VA panel, vertically aligned, so if your priority is the deepest black levels and the highest native contrast you can get from an LCD TV at this price point, also $290, I would opt for that. But if it's off-axis viewing is bad, and you will see black trails behind your mouse when you move it quickly, because that's the way those LCD technologies go.
All right. So, freaking mosquito is just going to town. He appreciated our recommendations last time. Not enough to use them, but he appreciated them.
Yep. We put in the effort. I did anyway. Yes.
That's right. And he's sure he will again this time. Also not use them. He just wants to keep asking the same question over and over again every 6 months. We'd like to know, how do we determine which models to recommend? What specs are we looking at? How might he go about researching and figuring out what to get for himself? Because if he ends up buying from a retailer other than Costco, they might have other different TV models available. And he'd like to know how to figure out for himself whether any of them are suitable or perhaps better than the Costco models we've suggested so far. So invariably, when you have set a price limitation,
yes,
that is your biggest limiting factor. We have to look at things below those numbers, and then we have to, and by we I mean of course Rob, have to decide what is your use case, so that, because you will by definition, by having a limiting factor, almost certainly need to make some hard decisions about what performance metrics are going to be more important.
Mm-hmm.
So for you, this is a computer monitor, so there's certain things that that computer monitors need to be able to do that normal TVs don't necessarily need to do all that well.
Yep.
So therefore, we have to think about that, and then within that, like for me, when I'm looking at TVs or looking at things, things like black levels and brightness and stuff, of course, are going to be coming up to the top, because those are, or HDR performance, those are going to be the factors that are going to make the TV look good.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but
for a computer monitor, not as vital. Yeah,
not as important. And you're more worried about refresh rates, and you're worried about how text is going to look, and whether or not it can, because on a normal TV, if text looks just okay, who cares? I mean, it's not like you're scrolling around. The text most of the time is static.
Mm-hmm.
So the couple of times that you might see something moving around because a camera is panning across something, if you even notice that the text is doing some weirdness, it only happens every once in a while, so you probably don't care.
Sure.
So you kind of have to balance things out that way, and so it's a balance between the price, the use case, and then what are the most important metrics within the performance that make it good for that use case.
Yeah, so I mean, he knew the size that he wanted. So I mean, almost any website you'll be able to set filters for what TVs you're looking at. So we can choose the screen size right away. That's an easy one. Then he knows the price point. Now, look, if you just limit it to $250, I'm like, well, I didn't get any options, so I'm going to have to increase that a little bit to $300 or $350 or something like that. But price and size are very two limiting factors in this case, where you're not going to have a gazillion options that you're faced with. But there might be ones where, especially Costco often has like Costco specific models where everything about the performance is exactly the same, but the model number is slightly tweaked so that they don't have to price match, because they're like, it's technically a different model number. So yeah, you absolutely might see slightly different model numbers, but you're not going to be overwhelmed in a case like this where you're limiting the screen size and limiting the budget pretty severely, that you're going to be inundated with too many choices. So then, yeah, in this case, as a computer monitor, the thing I care about most is going to be text clarity, and key of that is being able to support a 444 signal input, which not every TV, especially at this low price point, does. So that's actually the main thing I was looking for. It's why I ended up, like, there are other 42-inch TVs under $300, but why I went with this LG and this Samsung specifically is, if there's been a review on a site like Artings, Ratings, or PC Mag or Tom's Hardware or something, they will almost always mention whether or not it supports 444 signal input or not. If it hasn't been reviewed yet because it's too new, I look up the manual, because it'll be there. It'll be in the manual whether or not it has a 444 mode for the TV, and that's what I'm looking for. So there was like an Insignia from Best Buy, of course, at this price point, or a Roku TV or something at this price point, but they don't support 444. It's not mentioned anywhere in the model. It's not mentioned anywhere in any reviews that it supports that. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to opt for the LG or the Samsung in this case, because they support that 444, which is critical for text to look clear on a computer monitor. So honestly, other than that, I'm like, okay, one says it's IPS, one says it's VA. There isn't something intrinsically better about one or the other. There are compromises to either, and I talked about those. So that's how I would make that choice.
There you go. What are we time-wise?
I mean, I hope we can get to a few more. We spent too much time talking at the beginning.
Yeah, you did. John's considering getting the Sofabaton X1S remote. He already tried the less expensive Sofabaton U1 in the past, but he wound up returning it because it was forced to learn IR commands from his other remotes, and even after doing so, it never worked quite right for him. His most critical components he wants to control are his Outlaw Audio Model 976 Pre-Pro and his NVIDIA Shield and his Vizio TV. Can we confirm whether the Sofabaton X1S controls those directly, or will he be forced to learn commands again? The only one I would worry about would be the Outlaw.
Sure.
The other two, without even looking it up, I'm sure that
Yes.
it can do it.
Yeah. So yeah, for sure. So look, I don't have a Model 976 on hand to literally test, but I do have a Sofabaton X1, not the new X1S, but there's no chance that the X1S's database is smaller than the X1's.
Right.
They are the same remote. It's just the slightly different features on the wand itself of the X1S that make it a little bit nicer. So if you just put in, what brand am I using? Outlaw Audio. It's right there in the list. Once I've selected Outlaw Audio as the brand, what device am I using? I put in 976. It's right there in the list. So the chances that it doesn't control it are pretty small. If there's a single command it doesn't have, that you might need to learn. But it is definitely in Sofabaton's database as of today.
So what's the deal with the X1S using IR, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, and RF? Does it somehow magically know which method is best? Do you have to just pick one and use that for everything? How does the whole X1S situation work with its hub and all? As far as Bluetooth is concerned, in IR, if a device is IR controlled, that's how you control it, like your receiver. It is IR controlled. There is the way. So if you think about the database, that database would just have, what control method do I use?
It's a little bit different than that in the Sofabaton app setup.
Okay, so I'm just talking about from the Harmony side of things.
Yeah, no.
It doesn't, you don't select any of these things.
Right.
It just
No, in the Sofabaton app setup, it's a little bit different with what you're doing. So, first and foremost, nothing comes out of the Sofabaton X1S wand that you hold in your hand except a radio frequency signal that talks from the wand in your hand to the hub. That's it. There is no infrared coming out of that wand that's in your hand. There's no Bluetooth. There's no Wi-Fi. There is just a radio frequency signal that just lets the wand talk to the hub. So in terms of what is actually sending out the signals that controls my home theater gear, it's the hub and the hub only. Pointing the wand in your hand at your TV will do nothing. There is no infrared coming out of the wand in your hand. So it's 100% the hub sending out the signals to your devices. Now, there's basically a hierarchy when you're setting up how you're controlling things with the Sofabaton in the Sofabaton app. And the Sofabaton app is 100% necessary for setting up a Sofabaton remote. There is no way to do it with PC desktop software or something. You must use the app. There's no way to do the setup on the wand itself. You must use the app. So first there is Wi-Fi. If your device is controllable by Wi-Fi, that would be the best way to use it because you get two-way communication if it's controlled via Wi-Fi. There is an exceedingly limited number of devices that the Sofabaton can control via Wi-Fi. It's Philips Hue lights and I think a couple of Roku devices and one or two other things, but the list is really, really small and there's just that list. And if your device isn't in that list, then we don't have to worry about Wi-Fi anymore. So the second one would be Bluetooth. If you can control your device via Bluetooth, I would recommend that you do so. That is going to be the more reliable communication technique coming from the hub because it doesn't require line of sight like infrared does. So once again, I would go into the Bluetooth setup section and search for my device. If it's there, I will use it, and your NVIDIA Shield will be. Your Apple TV 4K, if you have one, will be. Your PlayStations will be. Those types of things are going to show up when you search for them. If your device does not show up when you search for it in the Bluetooth section, then Bluetooth control isn't available, and we're going to go to the third choice, which is infrared, IR. And almost everything is in there, but you will find like an Apple TV 4K, it shows up both in the Bluetooth section and the IR section. I would choose Bluetooth over IR for anything that does show up in the Bluetooth section. So I basically go in that hierarchy. It's in reverse order of what shows up on the screen, right? IR is at the top, followed by Bluetooth, followed by Wi-Fi, but I would start at the bottom. I would check the Wi-Fi first. If my device is not there, I will check it in the Bluetooth section. If my device is not there, I will revert back to IR. So that's how you set it up. The hub comes with 2 IR Blaster extenders. So that hub itself is just bathing your room in infrared light when it sends out commands. So even if you have it like under your TV and you're like, is it going to be able to send out an IR command, bounce it off my back wall and reach the TV's IR sensor? Oh, yes, it will. It just bathes your room in infrared blasting out of the hub. But let's say you've put your hub inside of a closet in a different room. Obviously, that infrared signal is not going to reach your TV in the room, but it comes with 2 infrared blaster extenders, wired extenders, to reach anything that needs line of sight. So that's how the whole X1S system works.
There you go. I did not know that. Lastly, I guess, Mike and his wife have have a TV set up in their living room. It's 13 feet wide, and they have a 3-seater couch that is 86 inches wide. I would prefer the room in inches as well. The couch is perfectly centered, so there's exactly 35 inches on either side of the couch for walkways.
There you go.
They've gone ahead and put up a sideways facing love seat on one side, though, so it's basically an L-shaped seating area now, and a 35-inch walkway on just one side of the couch. Mike's seat is in the middle seat on the main couch, perfectly centered in the room and directly facing the TV. Problem is, it doesn't recline. Sucks to be you, bud. Get a better couch. The couch is 20 years old now, and they've agreed it's time to get a new one. They want to keep the same seating arrangement, but it's critical of Mike that he has a perfectly centered middle seat on whatever new couch they get. But he really wants it to recline this time. We've no doubt come across the same dilemma he's facing. Every reclining 3-seat sofa he comes across only has 2 reclining seats, the left and the right, never the center. So, Mike, I got you on this one, by the way. But.
Okay, good.
So, are there any 3-seater couches we can recommend to him where the middle seat actually reclines too? Or is there a sectional that will replace the current couch and the left seat, but again, has a middle seat in the longer section that reclines? His wife doesn't want to get the typical theater recliners with armrests in between each seat and cup holders and lights that they don't really want. This is a living room, and they want a couch that looks like a living room couch, not theater seats. And lastly, they still need a proper walkway on one side, so it can't be too much wider than a current couch. Any suggestions? Okay, so I have a couch that is 10 feet wide-ish.
Okay, that's too wide, so they need a narrower version than yours.
But we got, basically what we did is we went to our local furniture place, right? Which is just normal. They got, the kind of a big showroom. They got couches and, all sorts of stuff everywhere. A lot of them are sectionals, okay? And what we did, because next to each one of these things, they'll have a little booklet. And the booklet will take you through and show you different configurations that you can put together and stuff like that. And the configurations are all stupid because they're for normal people who don't want to recline their middle seat like I do. Because I do want to recline my middle seat. So what they'll normally show you is some sort of L-shaped thing with a power recliner on either end and then an ottoman thing in the center, which is stupid. I don't want that. Right, and that's not what you want either. No. You want to have everything reclined that can
3 recliners.
Recline.
Yeah.
So what you end up doing is finding out that there are in these sectionals, there are power reclines, which are always on the end, and then there are manual reclines, which are often in the middle. So you have to go, and these people are going to look at you like you fell off the moon.
I know.
And be like, can I put it together in this way? And they're like, oh, well, I mean, you could, but why would you want to? Because now this listen, I don't care about the left side of this couch. I'm imagining that the left side is the one that's on the wall there.
Sure.
Okay, I don't care about the left side of this couch. I care about the part that's facing the TV. I want there to be a recliner on the end. I want there to be a recliner in the middle, and then the third seat, which is against the wall anyways. I don't want any of those seats on that wall side to recline because it would. Maybe it can fit, but a lot of times you can't recline the middle one that you'll be sitting in and the end of the couch on the wall side, because the recliner things will hit each other. The leg rest might hit each other. So you will have to decide whether or not that'll work in whatever couch you decide. You can build these things because almost all these sectionals have that option. They're just never used in that way.
Right, yeah.
Because
it's not a standard configuration.
But they're sectionals. You can put them together however you want.
Right.
Nobody's the boss of you. So that's how we did it. So what we have is a 3-seater couch, but each seat is like a seat and a half wide. So, the middle of the couch is like, you can put 2 narrow people on there or 1.5 people on it. Normal sized people on it. Or I guess 1 ginormous person in that seat. And each seat is like that. And we have power recline on the ends. And the middle seat, of which there is only 1, is manual recline. And do they perfectly line up? They do not. But You don't care, right? You don't care. There you go. That's
All
what
right.
you do.
So that is certainly one thing you could do. If you're looking for something that you can like literally just add to cart and order online, there is like a very traditional looking couch from Jerome's. They call it the Trilogy. And it's very affordable. It's only $1,200. But as you would expect, if this is a pretty affordable, normal-looking couch, available both in sort of like a tawny grayish color and a darker brown color. Those are the only two color choices. In a faux leather finish, right? This is obviously not going to be like full top grain leather for $1,200. But it is power recline. But it is very basic recline, right? There's no headrest recline. There's no lumbar adjustment. Certainly no lighting or cup holders or anything like that. And it is not a wall away design. This is a more basic recline, so it goes back quite a ways. It doesn't, you can't put this close to the wall behind it. That headrest goes right back. But yeah, for $1,200 from Jerome's, you can just add it to cart and order it if that's satisfactory for you. It is, I believe, 87 inches wide is what the website said. So that is 1 inch wider than your current 3-seater couch. If that's really all you want, that is an option that you could just order online. Now I'm going to mention something, you said you didn't want traditional theater recliners, but of course, if you are ordering, 3-seaters where all 3 seats recline, HT Market in their home theater seating design, they have multiple different looks, and one of them is called the Addison. That's the only one they offer that is not a leather finish. It is a microfiber finish, so it's got more of a traditional couch feel to it. It is not too wide at all. You just be getting one with a single right arm, one with a single left arm, and then an armless design. Now, the ones that do have arms, they do have a cup holder in them. There's no getting it without a cup holder. You're going to have to live with it having a cup holder. I don't know if that's a deal breaker, but it's only about 83 inches wide if you get the sofa configuration. And that armless one in the middle, if you're like, wait, I don't see where the controls are. You just reach your hand down the side into the crevice, and that's where the recline mechanism is for that. So that's all that's going on there. Not too bad. $2,340 to get that fully reclining system, the Addison from HT Market. You can talk to them if you need like customized colors or something like that, because the ones they have ready to ship are only coming in black, but there are ways to order it other ways. If you want something more upscale, very similar, but this is going to be way more features as far as the power goes, not just recline or de-recline. This model from the HT Market called the Clark, it does have adjustable lumbar. It has power headrest. It has a memory feature like the power seat in your car, so you can set it to your preferred reclining position and memorize it, and with a one-touch button, make it go to that position the next time you get in there. USB thing, it does have lights, but you can turn those off. And if you get the seat 3-seater sofa configuration of that, it's about 85 inches wide, so will still fit. So this does come in leather finishes. Again, if you want to customize it to be anything other than black, you have to call them up, and there might be an upcharge there. And you are looking at close to $4,000 for that one, but that's not out of range for reclining couches. That's not all that crazy. But that has all the features that you might possibly want for power. But again, cup holders are built into those armrests. But I wanted to mention them because sometimes people are like, I only ever see the theater seats where there's an armrest between every single seat, and I can't get it as a couch. It's like, no, you can. And you can get ones that aren't, ridiculous looking when they are just used as a couch. Last one I'll mention is Valencia theater seating. The website, is again theater seating, but they have reclining sofas that are available. They're not cheap. Everything's like $4,000 and up from Valencia. They're higher end stuff. Not all of their reclining sofas have all 3 seats recline, but some of them do. So you'll need to kind of carefully go through Valencia's lineup, but they have a couple of models at least where all 3 seats do recline, and then some where it's exactly like you described, only the 2 outer ones do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike
H's is definitely long.
all that.
Yeah, that one's very long. But I mean, if we want to hit Mario's, it's very short. We could just clean that up, and then Mike H will be first up next week. We could do that.
Mario says it doesn't say popped over to Best Buy to pick up an inexpensive 42-inch TV, but he accidentally bought an 83-inch LG G3 OLED instead.
Yep.
Whoops.
Yeah. Oopsie doopsie. How did that happen?
If you look at it on Best Buy's website, the 83-inch G3 is listed at $4,700 on sale right now. The G4 is over $6,000, and the new C4 is $5,000. But you mentioned offhand that he was planning to get an 83-inch C3 when they drop below $3,000. The guy at Best Buy said their particular store was clearing out C3 and G3 inventory, so could sell him an 83-inch C3 for $2,600, which is a good price.
Mm-hmm.
or 83-inch G3 for $3,100.
Yeah.
You can pass it up, right? I could pass up that G3 for that C3 right now. So now that has unexpectedly happened. He has a 40-foot HDMI cable runs. He has 40-foot HDMI cable runs. Being an installation and contractor himself, Mario made sure he put conduit in his walls before drywall went up, so pulling new cables is not a problem. But do we think it's worth replacing the 2 premium high-speed cables that are already in there with 2 new ultra-high-speed cables? I mean, if you want to get the full performance out of the thing, it depends really on what you're connecting to it.
Yeah, do you have any sources that require it? That's ultimately what decides that.
The question is, there is a limiting factor in what you can see on that TV. And that limiting factor could be the HDMI cable, or could be the fact that you still watch VCRs. So, your primary source is a VCR or a DVD player. So if whatever the limiting factor is, that's what you'll have to upgrade. Because as far as getting the audio back to from the internal apps on the TV,
if you're using them,
if you're using them, back to your receiver, that cable's fine for that. That cable's perfectly fine for that. But anything going the other direction, if you're going to be doing full Dolby Vision, Dolby, the audio,
that's fine. It's really only if you're doing something at greater than 60 hertz. If you've got an Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5, or a high-end gaming PC that's going to be doing frame rates higher than 60 hertz, that's really the only reason you would need to run an ultra high-speed cable. Because the premium high-speed cable is going up to 18 gigabits per second. That's 4K at 60, 444 if you want to do that. Dolby Vision, HDR10, all those things can be done over premium high-speed. It's really if you're just going to 120 frames per second. So, I mean, the 83-inch LG G3, it can do 4K 120 with variable refresh rate, with Dolby Vision at 120 frames per second. It'll check every green checkbox that an Xbox Series X can possibly show you. So if you have that source, it'd be like, yeah, you got conduit. I would run at least one ultra high-speed cable and take full advantage of everything that G3 could do. So, I mean, I don't know if Mario has access to better prices as a professional for in-wall rated, because you'd want in-wall rated when it's going inside a conduit inside of a wall. Certified, because I want certified. If it's HDMI ultra high-speed, I want it properly certified. So I don't know if he has access to better prices, but if it turns out that, because a lot of times the professional ones on cables are actually more expensive than you can just buy from Amazon. So Rui Pro, which was the first company to release fully certified fiber optic long length ultra high speed HDMI cables, and they've been reliable. They've been good this whole time. They have HDMI 2.1B certification, the very latest, 48 gigabits per second, CL2 in-wall rated, certified by HDMI LLC for ultra high speed. 50 feet, they don't have a 40-foot one, but they got a 50-foot one, fiber optic, of course, for $140 they can order right off Amazon. So that's the way I would go if I'm going to do it, but I don't think you need 2 of them, really. Using 2 different inputs for your PS5 and your Xbox Series X, I guess it's not out of the question. Maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. Like I said, it's so my limiting factor in here is my receiver, which basically can send everything it should be able to send out, but it just gets throttled back whenever you try to put out Dolby Vision, HDR, everything, and also get the on-screen display over the top of it. It just decides it can't. No volume. But
if you had premium high-speed HDMI cable, that's not the thing limiting that. So
that would not,
if you don't have a current gen gaming console or a high-end PC, like if you're talking what's coming out of my NVIDIA Shield, what's coming out of my Kaleidoscape, what's coming out of my Apple TV 4K, none of those are doing anything more than a premium high-speed cable can already do, 18 gigabits per second. So it's only if you've got high-end gaming.
There you go. So who's the last person? Wayne?
Mike H. Mike H., you will be first up next week. That's it.
All right. So we want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank for our 134 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation to us. So thanks very much to our 134 patrons over there.
We also want to thank those who sent in notes of gratitude, including Mohsen, Rob, Mike P, Dazz, and Mike H. Thank you for thanking us.
Yeah, those names one more time. We're Mohsen, Rob, Mike P, Dazz, and Mike H. Thank you so much for your notes of gratitude and encouragement. We very much appreciate them. And a big, big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
If you want to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. For AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.